lights go on. There we go. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the City of Monona Planning Commission, Monday, July 11th, 2022. Will you please call the roll?
Yes. Alder Moore.
Here.
Alder Holmquist.
Here.
Mr. Homberg.
Here.
Ms. Fallett. Here. Mr. Grease.
Here.
Mr. Conrad.
Here.
And Ms. Fox. Here. Mr. Stein is excused, or maybe we'll come later.
Okay, thanks very much. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of June 27th, 2022?
I'll move. I'll second.
Okay, I have a move and a second. Do I have any changes, corrections, additions to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. Is there anyone here to make an appearance on something that is not on the agenda this evening? On Zoom, is anybody on Zoom that is here to make an appearance on something that is not on the agenda tonight? Okay. Seeing no one, will close the appearance section and move to unfinished business. Number 5A, public hearing on the request by Populance LLC for approval of a zoning permit for construction of a new mixed-use building at 6501 Bridge Road, case number 2-006-2021. Welcome. If you could come up to the podium.
Yes.
Anything you want to present during the public hearing portion? And introduce yourself as well.
Okay.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to see everyone in person. So I'm Christopher Gosh, representing group. Jason is part of the group here as well, and then the owners of the restaurant that's at 6501 Bridge Road. So tonight is a culmination of a lot of effort back and forth, discussions with staff, the neighborhood, CDA. I really think that over the past year, maybe, I think that we've really had the opportunity to get feedback, get a lot of great feedback, and really evolve this project. As we started out with some interesting ideas for parking that I think for the betterment of the project didn't necessarily go the way that we were anticipating, but I do think that it made a much better project. So since the last time we were here, we've been working with staff and Gary Becker on the project. We did go back to CDA. We have our unit mixes all squared away. We've got the parking all resolved. With Doug, the unit types. We went through Public Works to discuss the on-street parking, what sort of improvements are going to be needed and required for that. Utilities, we did have an engineering review by Darren Pope a couple weeks ago. I think there's just a couple comments that we would still have to resolve with staff on those. One, I guess the most notable one would be possibility of a rain garden sort of retention basin on the south end, low part of the site, which we would certainly like to discuss that. I think the slideshow that I brought is just more or less a summary of kind of where we are. I have no idea how to access that, or if
I can put it up.
Okay. And if you can indulge me, we can just kind of run through it quickly.
That'd be great, and
yeah.
well, it's important not only for our benefit, but for the public's benefit that doesn't have all the detail that we have in the blueprint. So we appreciate you going through the slides.
Yep. So I think this is the package. You don't have the slides that I did for Doug?
No, I just have the
Okay.
the packet. Sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. So if we go to the next slide, that's the existing site. When we first looked at this project, we had a very well-liked restaurant with an owner that was ready to give something back to the community here, and that's how we got involved, to create a very unique sort of signpost project for that site. The first thing that jumped out at us was the massive rights-of-way for Bridge Road and also the West Broadway frontage road, and that started driving a lot of how we thought about the site in general. Skip to the next one.
Could we maybe enlarge that so that, there you go, better, thank you.
So that's the existing site, just that existing one-story restaurant on there, lots of asphalt. The buildings, I think outlived its usefulness, in general, although it is still a functioning restaurant. We keep skipping down. So we actually go back up one. So we're proposing to demolish the restaurant, strip all the asphalt off. There are three interventions, one right at the corner of Broadway and Bridge Road, where we are proposing to extend out the curb and gutter to protect some of the parallel parking along Bridge Road, and then a larger bulb on the south side of the site, again to differentiate and show where that parallel parking is along Bridge Road. Then on the northwest, or I guess southwest side of the site, where it's graded in, there's an existing curb cut and driveway that we would be replacing with curb and gutter there and replacing the sidewalk. So those are the demo parts of the site. There's some existing utilities, obviously we would vacate, and then we believe we found a pretty efficient way to get into the existing utilities on Broadway without getting into the street. So there's a pretty good easement along Broadway where we can access the sanitary. The water line cuts through on the sidewalk to the west, and we can access that without actually disrupting the street or having to dig into the street. And then most of the sanitary is taken care of either through an existing structure on the north side of the site, or we're proposing to reuse another existing structure on the south side of the site with some modifications. So we can skip to the next one. So this would be the underground plan. So the parking, we've got one level of underground parking, and that through many discussions, not only with this body but also with staff, this parking would be private, and it would take care of all of the residential units, including the live portion of the live work units, with about a 6 or 7 stall surplus. I can't remember exactly how it was. One interesting thing to note, we're very cognizant of working with One City Schools. We think that's an absolutely incredible addition to the community in this particular area. If you look at the intersection of Bridge and Broadway, so that shaded area was the maximum queuing area during the busiest times from One City's traffic studies. So we wanted to make sure we weren't impacting anything in a negative way. And we also worked with engineering and staff and public works to use that existing street width and have one aisle of parallel parking, a drive-in aisle, and then maintain all the outlanes. That way we don't have to mess around with any of the street lights or reprogram anything. It was a really, really efficient way to go about it, but again, it was we had a lot of width to work with, so it was, we were already in an advantage starting that. And then curving along towards West Broadway, towards the WPS and One City School sites, that's where we would have parallel parking on both sides of the street there, which still allows us more than sufficient drive aisles for each direction. And then, obviously it turns into a private lane right past that bulb. So skip to the next one. That's just a grading plan, and that one's not really that interesting. We can keep going. Okay, so then when we start doing our analysis for our stormwater, how we're going to manage our stormwater, what we're doing for open space, what we actually want to provide here for pedestrian access. This really isn't the best one to show it, but we do have permeability through the whole site. I know on some other slides, on previous plan commission meetings, we had that pretty well defined. That has not changed. What we are providing is a multi-purpose path that's going down Bridge Road and then wrapping back up on West Broadway. And we really felt that was important to find a nice, reasonably safe path for students or anyone else using One City School or this project as well. Again, we had the space for it. We thought it was a very nice addition to this project. So that's in blue on the left side, and then it turns gray as it turns around, and then that connects into the existing sidewalk right at the edge of the property, which essentially becomes WPS. We do have all of our underground parking is accessed at the very bottom of the site. We do have some pretty substantial vision triangles down there. Now the entry is at grade, so we were not concerned about any sort of blind exit out of that or anybody flying out of that thing and up an incline and then potentially creating a hazard there. So we're extremely comfortable with the visibility and the stormwater, we really we're scratching our heads a little bit on this, and just so everyone knows, not having a surface parking lot is so advantageous for the stormwater calculations. It's just in terms of almost every metric. So that was one of our goals, is to really not have to look out over cars or asphalt on this project. And then the added benefit of not having that the heat island for the asphalt, but then also for the stormwater quality and stormwater management and control. It's just we just feel it was a good decision to skip to the next.
Could you call out on that slide which surfaces are the pervious ones? Permeable.
So the brown is the roof.
Yeah.
The yellow is the plaza. So that would be draining. It would be collected by an area drain, and then the blue is the side.
Where's the permeable pavers?
Pardon?
Where are the permeable pavers?
Oh, so the permeable pavers, will be either the yellow and then the blue entries at the top.
The blue entry at the top. So all the sidewalk on top? Because
Not all the
your
sidewalk.
key is really hard for us to read because it's black and white.
Oh,
So it's really hard to tell what's what. But looking up there, it looks like pervious might be the utility path going over to
Right.
One City.
Yep.
So that's permeable concrete or something?
That's our.
Okay, and then the entry to the underground is permeable pavers?
No, so the entry.
That's concrete.
That would be concrete.
And what about the throat that isn't blue? That's all concrete? It's a different color.
The blue is just the vision triangle.
So the blue is concrete. South of the blue coming out to the road, is that all concrete too?
Yes, that would all be concrete.
Because that looks, okay. So basically it's just that little plaza area and then the path going to One City?
Correct.
Okay. You said something on top might be.
And then the yellow. So the yellow, we'd like to take that and then drain it to the landscaping. So that's going to be a level up. So we're going to take that and collect it.
So it's permeable, you collect it and then, okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah. That's just a section through the roadway. The Ridge Road, just showing what the drive aisles are. Just some standard details. So landscaping plan. So we've got a mix of native and non-natives spread throughout the site here. We really wanted to find a nice way to shield and accent some of the wood spaces and get some color in there. And find some bee and butterfly communities, and especially the bee friendly species to we were looking at that for. And a lot of grasses, just ones that are pretty hardy and easy to maintain and come back every year. Skip the next page. Just examples of landscaping patterns. Lighting plan, so we've got, it's all exterior LED lighting. We're going to bounce a lot of this off of that, the plaza roof, so we don't have any direct lighting. We would like to have the ability to change the color and intensity on that, on some of those. That's just something we would just mess around with on site. If it doesn't work, we just submitted everything just as just a home light. Those are the light fixtures. Underground parking level, so we're excavating out for the parking, and we've got another portion that's just a site for that. That's the plaza plan. That's the roof component. So the idea for that is there would be office or a workspace on the first floor, and then it would be connected to the second floor with a stairway, and that would have living space up on the second floor. So they would be combined for service. We do have one dedicated commercial space off of Bridge Road. It's about 3,000 square feet. Yep, right there. And as we work up, then we've got the third and fourth floor, 29 units total between those two floors. Then we have on the first two floors, the live work, we've got a palette of masonry on the commercial on the left side and the right side. The center would be a composite wood material, and then we would have an insulated metal panel with two different colors that would be on the third and fourth floors. The windows, yeah, if you skip to the next one, I think there's a material sheet. So we've got masonry veneer, insulated metal panels, and the composite. We want to keep that, fairly volumetric. We want to get too many materials in there. Just keep it clean, and really think that the massing and the shadows and the ability to kind of work through the site pedestrian or bike level will really define the spaces pretty well. So we get some additional details. And yeah, I think the thing that we're really excited about is the live workstation of this, which we've been that was almost from day one. That was part of the concept of the site. We are reacting a lot to what's been happening over the last couple of years, in addition to the ability to have some equity, have a lot of these smaller, medium-sized businesses, instead of renting, actually have an ownership model. And the feedback that we've been getting on this has just been fabulous. So we're really excited to have that opportunity and to give business owners that option for this. And other projects that are in process right now that we're using a similar model with, those are primarily professional people buying these spaces, attorneys, accountants, lobbyists, people of that nature. So there's not a lot of walk-up business, and that's the other thing that assisted, I think, the process for us to find our parking ratios and to make sure that we were going to have a lot of high-intensity uses on this site. So I don't want to keep rambling, but I think if this is open up for questions.
Okay. Well, is there anyone else here that wanted to speak during the public hearing portion on this particular application? Okay, and then we will close the public hearing and move to 5B, consideration of action on the request by Populants for the approval of a zoning permit for construction of a new mixed-use building at 6501 Bridge Road, case number 2-006-2021.
Sure. Okay, so I'll give a summary of the staff report for everyone. As has been presented, we've got a mixed-use development on the corner of Bridge Road and Broadway. There have been several pre-hearing conferences, and this is now a consideration of action for the zoning permit. So the site is zoned as part of the community design district, and a zoning permit is required because of the new construction. Both land use maps, current and future land use maps, categorize this site as commercial, and the CDD is generally expected to include a compatible mix of residential, commercial, industrial, and other open space uses. The proposal is 45 residential units. 16 of those would be the live-work type units, and then 29 would be traditional apartments. They range from studios to 2 bedrooms. There is 3,255 square feet of traditional commercial space, and then 8,100 square feet of the workspace as part of the live-work units. In terms of site design, all of the vehicle circulation goes through a curb cut on the southern edge of the property. So this provides access to the underground parking. There is also parallel parking included along Bridge Road and Engle. And as discussed, there's a nice multi-use path that goes around the entire site. There is a landscaping plan included, which shows a bunch of landscaping. And actually, I'll talk about parking first. So there are 61 stalls in the underground parking, as well as 26 parallel parking stalls. There's also extensive public and private bike parking included on the site. Because several of the units are live-work units and are expected to be businesses that don't necessarily require lots of customer parking, the applicant is requesting that for the commercial, for the work sections of the live-work units, that parking stalls be considered on a 1 stall per 400 square feet of space instead of the 1 stall per 300 square feet of space, which is what the code typically requires. So with that 1 per 400 square feet metric, the residential units would require 56 parking stalls, and then 20 stalls would be required for the commercial space, including the live-work units. So with this 1 per 400 square foot metric, the parking on site would meet that parking requirement versus if we went by the typical code standard, there would be a 7 stall deficit on site. So that's something for I know parking has been part of the discussion in the past, and if the commission has any other questions or discussion about that, you can certainly bring it up. Just to note about the parallel parking, Public Works did review and recommend approval of the plans as they are shown now, and they approved that in April. There is closed-loop geothermal proposed for the site, and Bierbecker has reviewed their stormwater and erosion control plans. As stated, any comments from Bierbecker should be addressed by the applicant before the final permit can be approved. And then landscaping with the 61 underground parking stalls as proposed, they would be required to have 915 landscaping points. The landscaping plans included show 1,515 points, so well above what's included in the requirement, with more than enough canopy trees as well. The only thing to note with the landscaping plan is that there are a few trees located in the plan. They're shown underneath the plaza, and just in case there are any questions about that, I wanted to point it out. Lighting plan is also included. There's a little bit of light trespass at the property line around the entrance to the parking garage and the corner of Ridge Road and Engle. There aren't residential properties immediately adjacent to the site, so the Plan Commission might want to discuss whether or not that's acceptable given the location. I think there were a couple comments from city staff. The fire chief commented that a hydrant will be needed on site. And then Public Works Director Stefani commented he just wanted to verify that the applicant would be responsible for restriping the pavement where there is parallel parking, and that all of the consulting engineers' comments about stormwater would be addressed. I think those are all the main points. With that, staff recommend approval with the motion as outlined in the staff report.
Thank you very much. Well done. That I just have a couple of quick questions, and before I open it up to the commission, Chris, you should probably go back up to the podium because anything that you respond, that's how we. So I appreciate that. So a couple of questions that I had just in general. The last time we met, I think you tossed out the possibility that some of these would be potentially ownable as opposed to all rental. Are you going the all rental route, or because there was some discussion of potentially mix, I believe, in the last session?
So this has been a really interesting path to define this, especially as we go through and talk with CDA about this. So what we don't want is it to be empty.
Right.
We really want these to be for sale, the first 2 floors at a minimum, and the live work. So we would absolutely offer them for sale first. Jason will be gauging that. I think we already have a couple people that were interested in the purchase model, and that's what we really believe is the right way to go about this.
Okay.
Now, if we have a couple that are just still sitting out there, we would like the flexibility for a short-term rental on those, but we would absolutely want to give these smaller medium business owners a chance to start building equity, have ownership in this place, and then it just, the benefits of that are they just start to increase exponentially, as everyone knows. So that's really what we believe in and what we're trying to do for these.
Okay, terrific. And my second question, as somebody who's been a bit of a champion on sustainability for a number of years on the council, is can you, because I don't think that there's been another proposal in front of us with a closed loop geothermal in it, can you just share a little bit about what you're seeing as the advantage of the geothermal?
Oh, so I can never, everything's so complicated, right? It's tough for me to give bullet points, but back when we first started looking at this, rent is crazy. Car ownership, the cost of car ownership is crazy. We were putting everything in the blender to say what's the actual cost of living. Can we try to do something with cars? Well, we tried, it didn't really work. Can we do something with the construction type, to try to get that rent down? Well, maybe a little bit. What about utilities? Can we give not only for the building owner, but for the residents, right? Can we have a stable, predictable utility bill, right? And the way that we found the most effective way to do that would be through the geothermal loop system. And where this is located, where we've got a big enough site, we've got the wells that are going to be not too bad. But that's one variable we can take out, not only for the people living there, but it's just a more efficient system too. It's better for everybody.
Yeah.
So
High water tables also makes it a lot easier.
that's exactly right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. And then, in addition to that, then we also have the mass timber floors, which are, soaking up all that CO2. But those are, we can't quite get to a full mass timber building yet, but, we're definitely getting close. And that's another one we're pretty excited about, continuing to utilize that component as well. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
With that, I will open it up to Commission members. Chris, would you like to start?
Sure, are we going to have anything that Darren should be talking about? Because there are a couple of things you wanted to talk about tonight.
Sure. Yeah. Darren, did you want to?
Or should we just get it?
No, we can do it now. Yep. Darren, did you want to share your thoughts before we start?
You're muted.
Up here. Maybe not.
Well, maybe we'll just have the thumb up and a thumb down when we ask him a question.
Somehow, we still can't hear you, Darren, for some reason. We're not sure why.
Lips are moving. Okay, that was a bad idea.
All right. Well, do you see anything on your end as to why that would be?
No. I wonder if it's
Is our volume up?
a media thing. I know we've been playing around with the volume. There we go.
Okay. Monona Community Media, perhaps there might be a volume issue on your end.
We're working on it.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Let's start.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and start, Darren, and as soon as we get your volume figured out, assuming we do, we'll come back to you. Thanks for hanging in the meantime. Chris, go ahead.
In no apparent order. I guess first I'd like to say congratulations. When you first came here and you had this dream, I thought, wow, he's a long ways from making this work. and you really have come a long ways, and you've been determined in all phases. So congratulations for that.
Thank
giving up. Your geothermal field, where is it? You don't have a lot of land. Is it under the parking garage?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I'm looking at that. You don't have enough room there for a geothermal field, but
Sure.
underneath the parking garage. Okay, thanks. Plan sheet C2.01 says 0 square feet of driveway pavement. And you just told me that it's concrete pavement coming out of underground parking.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me pull that one up. Okay,
C2.01. And the site information block down in the lower left, where you figure out your square footage of impervious.
okay, proposed pavement impervious area, that was meant to be parking.
Yep, but the driveway's not on here anywhere. You have sidewalks on here, but the driveway is impervious.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
The additional hydrant that the fire chief needs, is that on our current plans?
No, so that was something that, as part of Darren's review.
Oh, wow.
So I did bring this up to Public Works a long time ago, but I think what,
Well, everybody can.
yeah, I'll show you, but the easiest spot for this, which would meet the requirements, is that existing park hydrant right over here, where we're going to do our tap into that water.
So that just be a condition that you get approval from the fire chief on your hydrant location.
Yep.
Okay. So the owners of the businesses, I understand what you said. It'll be for rent, but it'll be for sale. And any owner, you as an owner, can rent it out until you sell it. Really?
Correct.
So it'll work great that way. On the finding of fact, I'd like to change that up a little bit. the way it's written right now is just, well, these businesses don't have as much of a need for parking, so we're going to let them get by with less. That's Pandora's box. We open up that box, everybody's going to come in and say, well, we don't have much of a parking need. I'd rather say, the way we really looked at it a few meetings ago, that the owners of the businesses live above the workspace, which lessens the demand for employee parking, because the employee's already living there. And that's a very specific case. So as far as a precedent, it's the reason I believe we're doing it, because the employees already live in there, and they've already been given a parking spot, so it would be doubly enough to create a second one.
Correct, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's exactly right. That's what we see as the benefit. Plus, as we start going through the 2015 and 2018 building code, that's exactly how that's written. Right?
So I prefer that we just redo that finding of fact to read it that way. Question, it was hard for me to read on your first floor facade. How much of that is brick and how much of it is that wood?
The commercial pod, the one behind it, and then the one on the far west, and the one in the middle is the wood.
So it's primarily the brick?
Yeah.
Okay, because we had talked about that before, to have a primary brick first floor.
Yes.
So, okay.
Yep.
All right. The lighting trespass, I think, is fine. This is a very busy commercial area. We've got where we're hoping now to have pedestrians on that path and everything, so I don't see any issues with a little light trespass into a busy and dangerous intersection and all those areas around there. So I think it's just fine. Permeable pavers, your permeable pavers are up on top, so you've got plenty of separation from the groundwater. Okay. I'd like to talk about the street parking a bit. Are you chair of Public Works? Thank you. I think the parking lanes are a little wide. I don't think we need 9.5 feet or more for a parking lane. Winnebago Road's too narrow, that's 6 foot, but I think 8 foot is plenty. And the reason I'm saying this is I'd like to see a longitudinal stripe at 8 foot all the way along, and then we can put the perpendicular ones in. But when you put it there, people get their cars in there. If you don't, it's a little more haphazard. And that gives us another foot and a half on those drive lanes. And I think to try to keep the cars over there at the 8 foot limit, other than probably an original Hummer, they can all fit in there. So I think it would behoove us, and much like we did on Winnebago Road, I know Milwaukee, a lot of the areas now, they try to stripe that parking lane with a longitudinal stripe also. It keeps people in that curve a lot better. And I don't think you care where it's at. The only thing I did is add a stripe. Two stripes. And I'm going to ask, we have Public Works approval on everything that we have, Brian? And the one thing we would need is we need to eliminate that one stall that Dan talked about. So as a condition, if we have a condition, the revised striping plan, would you be comfortable with it going directly to City Council for approval, or would you want to see it at Public Works again?
Staff approval.
Staff approval, well, they'd have to submit it to public, or to City Council.
Yeah, and then if there's an issue, we can redirect it from there.
Okay. We talked about the garage circulation before. It's pretty tight. Are you pretty comfortable with it?
Yeah, and Darren had reviewed that.
Okay, it's tight, but I believe it's doable.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. We talked about that future parking none of us want. I love the area you put down there with grills and fire pit and everything. It's awesome amenity, but of course the condition will say that if there's an issue that you may need to put that in the future.
And we'll move the grill somewhere else.
When we first met, you were going to try to save some of these oak trees. I don't see a single one being saved.
Not only they're not in very good shape, but we just...
A couple of them are, but
yeah,
you're doing a lot of disturbing around their roots.
Yeah.
So that gets me to the landscape plan. I don't think it's over points, because I would have 20 stalls that are also supporting this project when I did the calculation. Plus, you're on a really, really important corner for us, so I expect a really nice landscape plan. One thing that seems to be missing are substantial canopy trees. I mean, you've got magnolias, you've got a number of trees that they're nice, but they're not canopy tree like an oak or a maple or anything. I would like to see a few canopy trees installed in there somewhere, maybe even in that terrace where those 2 oak trees are now. You're taking them out, but you do have a terrace between your sidewalk on Bridge Road and the curb. but I'd like to see an opportunity for somewhere to have a couple, some substantial canopy trees. But that site right now is beautiful with all the oaks. Some of them are pretty bad, but some of them are pretty good.
Okay, so essentially there's some street trees along Bridgeway. So
Probably there, and if you can find something on the other side. I mean, I just like to see a few nice canopy trees so that as this site grows and matures, there's something nice there. And I know you want to look at where you're going to put them based on windows and views and everything, but I think you've got some opportunity there. I was hoping Rob would be here to talk about that, but I think there's some opportunity there to put some substantial canopy trees in. Another thing we talked about when we were first here is the workspace restriction. You said you're going to have something nice written up for us to show that it will be a true workspace.
So that was, I don't know if I was going to present something, but it was something for our discussion here.
And then to see what you're going to have there, just so we know that. I mean, the whole goal is that it's not just somebody's lackadaisical home office, and it's not really a business. No. For what you described, people remote working, for all the things you described, they're all great. What I'm trying to get at is that it's just not a spare room for a resident, and it's not really business, because we were careful about keeping commercial down there.
Yep, and we don't want somebody to put a ping pong table down there.
Right, exactly.
Right? So if there's, more than happy to, and again, I don't know if it would be a deed restriction. I remember, I thought I asked them about this a while ago. Or if there's some language to the, to the approval where we could restrict it to just work. I just don't know what that meant.
Figure out a way to do it. It'll be a condition to come back and just figure out a way and do that. If you're going to sell someone, a deed restriction might be appropriate.
Mm-hmm. And that's
So that they're held to that same thing.
Yep, and that's what we have.
And that's your goal. So we talked about some type of deed restriction that just explains what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I can definitely keep working with Doug on that.
Bike stalls. I missed it, but where are the bike stalls on that grade? I missed it.
So there's the recycle up here,
Yep.
and then we start going on the plaza, and then there's some here.
Great, thank you. There's a note on our review that says we might want to talk about charging stations. And one nice thing about charging stations and underground parking, they're really easy to add. We usually have that as a condition to go under the asphalt so the conduits are there. But I don't know that we really need something here because you can just run it right along the walls. And I would add that some proposal we've had here also run bike racks right in front of your assigned parking stall. It's a great place for somebody to be able to hang up a bike or two. I believe those are easy to add, so I'm not sure I would call for a restriction for that on this.
And we certainly were planning on that. I wasn't quite sure how to show that.
I was just explaining because a lot of times that's one of our conditions, but I'm not sure it's necessary when you have the ability to install those conduits anytime afterwards.
Absolutely.
It was hard looking through all your light fixtures. There's some wall packs that look like they might not be shielded, and some were shielded. Is this all shielded lighting?
It's all shielded.
Okay. Where is the grow cover mix? That was a nice looking mix. Is it just on the north side there?
It is. So that should be all the way up here.
Okay, so on the perimeters, so that's it related to the landscape. It's a nice looking mix. One of the things that were on the report was the detectable warning surfaces. You said you'd rather not. Darren had recommended you do those. Do you want to go over that?
I guess I was just questioning that. I mean, typically, we don't do it.
Can I give my viewpoint on it?
Yeah.
Those detectable warning surfaces are required by ADA, which is a federal law, and the way it's enforced is you get sued. And if you're leading a pedestrian into a traffic area, you're supposed to have them. Now, you've got your underground driveway, right, for parking, underground parking driveway. And so where that walk path goes right through there, many people, I would probably interpret it too, that you should have that surface there. So if there's somebody with tactical needs, they know that they're walking into a main driveway or something, and it's just not a continuation of the sidewalk. And that's the reason for it.
Yep.
And if you're leading them into major traffic, 60 cars or whatever it is, I think it's something you should consider.
Yep. Absolutely.
I'm going to go through Darren's report and your answers in a couple of the areas you talked about. The first one was the parking, and we talked about it where we would strike 8 foot over, and we got to take a look at our parking code on parallel stalls. It seems backwards to me the way it's written. I agree with your preference on the bump outs where it was discussed they might be straight, but I think the bump outs are a lot safer, and that's the way it's been drawn. That's the way you're proposing it, and I definitely agree with that. You had a note, and I'm not sure why, on the last item there, an asphalt pavement detailing indicating the aggregate base gradation, thickness, binder, and surface course should be added to the plans. You say discuss. What do you want to discuss?
Can we do any sort of color stamped asphalt?
Absolutely. My experience with colored and stamped asphalt is it doesn't last unless there's no traffic on it. Colored and stamped concrete does last, but that's your choice. But yeah, all he's talking about is a pavement detail because we have requirements for medium use or high use.
Yeah,
So I think his
and-
question was that, and I don't think we would come back or look at him if he decided to do colored or stamped asphalt in lieu of the standard that was on the plans as presented.
Okay.
Okay, the biobasin, you want to talk about that? What's your preferred solution there? And they're showing a preferred is the biobasin on the corner.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that, back maybe a couple months ago, when we were really digging into this stormwater management plan, we had proposed something down there, and then, took it out because we didn't think we needed it. I thought Darren had a really interesting comment that, yeah, there is the potential for something to get caught at that bump out. I just want to make sure everyone was comfortable that is in the right of way. But then I wanted to understand that we would have a maintenance agreement to maintain it.
He would, but it's not being required. He's saying that's his best option, but you do have stormwater there, and I don't think it's a requirement for the water quality right now. It's better, and it is a maintenance item, so I mean, you could propose to have that cut there at the same place they're talking about and just pick it up with normal storm sewer too.
And that's would be our...
Which would be a lot less maintenance for you.
Well, it'd be less maintenance for us, it'd be less, I think, headaches for everybody.
And unless some other commissioners think otherwise, I think it's a fine solution. And again, my experience is the biobasins right out there by the traffic, they don't get maintained that well. Look at ours in the middle of Monona Drive. They're tough. They're tough to get in. They're tough to maintain. And again, he's out in the right of way doing it. I think you could. It's a nice landscape area. You have some nice grass, maybe some little landscaping in there, like you normally would, and collect it with an inlet, and it would still do some good. Unless somebody else says something, I don't think that's a bad solution for that area.
Well, but I would like to keep the landscaping involved, since, we
Understood. So we'll just need some detail to come back to the final treatment at that corner.
Yep. But, even if it's turf, I think that would still be just fine.
Would like to discuss options to meet this requirement. This is the green infrastructure.
Yeah, so I guess what we would like to do, the ordinance we were working off of online did not have that in there, so that was our fault for not seeing that. We did get the updated ordinance.
Could I interrupt for just a second? Here's my opinion on this. This is the new ordinance, and the reason it's not shown in ours is because this is what the Dane County adopted. And when Dane County adopted it, they actually cranked up, they took Madison's, but they cranked up a couple things just because they did, and they eliminated one really key thing in it. In this case, they're going from 32,700 square feet down to 26,900, and it would have to be 26,200 to meet. I think that's close enough for me. For everything they're doing on the site, all the things they're doing that are environmentally friendly here, that are sustainable, I think this little one we could give them for a few hundred square feet. My opinion, we'll see what anybody else says, but you're doing a lot here. You've done most of the things we've asked for, and I think that's one where you're so close that I think it's fine. infiltration. This is, I don't know if Darren can hear us. I'm assuming he can. It just talks about this, I'm sorry, it's a little further down on the last item before erosion control, that all downspouts, driveways, and other impervious areas shall be directed to pervious surfaces where feasible or unless the applicant can demonstrate that the practice is likely to result in groundwater contamination. This is an item that was put into our code. Jane Kuzma asked for it. So what would that be, 15 years ago or more? Just trying to be a little more environmentally friendly. Darren, I'm sure you were at the same NASICA conference as I was this year. And there was a really interesting presentation by a professor, I can't remember one of the UW schools, I can't remember which one. And he did a bunch of studies where he actually took these individual areas that the downspout drains through on grass, and he charted every one, and concentration of phosphorus through there, plus where it is everyone else, and then what the resulting phosphorus loading was to the receiving water body. It was shocking. It was shocking that we should not be doing this, because what it does is it takes all this phosphorus and it just purges it out of the grass, and then it comes back in with the normal stuff, and it purges it every time it's there. I think for a little bit of additional good, this is just a feel-good thing we put in. For that little incremental good it does to have that in there, we're actually putting concentrations of phosphorus into our stormwater system, which goes into our lakes and rivers. So I think after that presentation, what I saw, I'd be inclined to say I would rather you put this is roof water that doesn't have phosphorus. I'd rather put it in the storm sewer right away and not expose it to all that phosphorus. So in this case, where they're asking you to run a little bit where you can through, and I don't know, you said knowledge, but I think the faster you get roof water into the storm sewer, the better, because you're not picking up other pollutants. And I think that's something we, as a planning commission, need to talk about. We might want to amend this a little bit. And I think I got one more here. Could you explain reduction of parking requirements approval of community car parking program for development exchange for parking space reduction? This is one of the actions in your presentation. What is the approval of community car parking program for development?
Lord, is that in the latest one?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, that was.
I don't want it. I'm just interested in what it is.
You remember?
That was the first
That's what we
rendition.
I remember that. I want explanation. I have it tonight.
That's my fault. That was just
Okay.
a sloppy word.
I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Sorry about that last couple.
Did we figure it out?
We're still trying.
Okay,
It's just, they can cure us through tests.
okay,
It's just, we can't opinion or, I don't know what's going on.
okay. Thank you, appreciate your work. Thank you, Chris. So just, Chris, for my clarity, with the original parking thing you were talking about, you're talking about narrowing the parking?
Yeah, the parking that's along the streets.
It's along the street.
You don't need 9.5 feet to park a car.
Right, so, but there is, from a traffic engineering standpoint, if you widen the street, does that not encourage faster speeds?
There's that thought, but having it parked on both sides, it still feels pretty narrow. I just think, we should discuss it.
Yeah.
I think in this case, with the traffic coming and going from one city school, we should keep it as wide as we can for them. If you think you want to keep it narrow, then we go back to 9. Either way, we should strike that longitudinal stripe to delineate where the traffic lanes are.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about it also from a
Sure.
one city school standpoint of if it's wider, does that encourage people to, once they take that corner, to sort of hit the accelerator
Sure.
when they're zooming down to the school,
Sure. That's reasonable.
Yeah. So,
We should just decide what it is,
Right.
and then
right.
I still would like that longitudinal one. I like to find lanes. If you don't do anything, then it seems bigger yet, especially when cars aren't parked there.
Right.
Even here, when the cars aren't parked, it gives you a little bit of that narrowing, but allows the lane, because I think they were, 13-foot lanes they had there on the old frontage road?
11.
11? No, you should widen that. 11's pretty narrow. That's pretty narrow.
But then 9.4 for the.
Right, so if we take that out, then we're up to 12.5.
Which is more typical.
And my other question is related, Chris, if you could just respond to this, since Rob isn't here. For some reason why, I think Rob would be the first one to say all native. Can you explain a little bit so you're thinking around the non-native planting, because you said that there would be some non-native ones that we.
Yeah, so the non-native ones were some of the ornamental grasses and some of the ornamental trees.
Yeah. All right, great, thank you. Corinne?
I agree with what Chris had said about the finding of fact, because when I read it, because I knew what we were talking about, I was like, oh, of course, but looking at it again, yeah. So I agree with that. As far as the width of the lanes, I think it would help with the parallel parking too, to have a wider road, just because, you know, you pull up alongside and then you have to back in. So having it be a little bit wider would probably just help be able to maneuver around a car that is trying to parallel park. So I think that's a good suggestion. I was wondering, you mentioned the private bike parking. Is that down in the underground parking area? Okay. And is it for each stall, or is it just separate?
So there's some group areas, but then we would put a hook
Okay.
in front of each.
Is there a reason that you wouldn't just put some conduit in for some electric vehicles to begin with underground?
No, it's absolutely what we're planning to do.
Okay.
For bikes and also for
Okay.
car charging.
The landscaping, so the staff report did mention that there were some trees that were underneath the building, I guess.
Mhm.
So what is the thought there? Do you think they'll get enough light and water to?
Well, we can get them enough water. I'm not 100% certain if they're going to get enough light. So we wanted to give it a shot and see how they do after a few years, and then we replace them with with something else. We just don't know. But that's, right now we do think that they will be able to survive. Based on studies that the light and shades.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see. And I do think that.
Yes, test.
There's a smile of victory right there. Oh. I think the landscaping that you've picked is lovely. But yeah, I kept hearing Rob in my head as well. And I think there might be some native grasses that would do what you're looking for these non-native species to do, and would just contribute, I think, to the beauty of the site and the fact that there's that woodland behind it. So I would encourage you to look at some of the native species.
Okay.
In addition, I also was looking for some bigger trees. I've never planted a Japanese maple, but I've heard that they can be a little bit more temperamental. So I don't know if anyone else has experience with that.
There's a lot of them, but they don't get more than 10, 12 feet of the very best. They're not really canopy trees.
Yeah.
And they are susceptible to the freeze if they get a good hard freeze.
Right. So, and it just, they're beautiful, but I think finding some little bit hardier species would be a benefit.
Okay, and I would like to add some canopy trees along the bridge and going back up. I'll show you guys some options for that.
Okay. Otherwise, I have no further comments. I think it looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have questions about the warning fields, but Chris covered that already. I also, the same comment about the canopy trees. I don't know, what's reasonable for us to ask as far as like the health of existing trees? You know, if it's a mix of there are trees that are unhealthy and have to go, but other ones where like, is there anything that we can ask for that's more of an effort of like keep?
We sure can. That would make sense.
Okay. I mean, there's just a lot of old trees over in that area, being as near as the woodland. Any trees that we can have, that we can keep that are already there, I would appreciate, you know, like an intentional effort of trying to make an effort to keep the trees. I also agree with the comment about the native grasslands. We've planted several what we would consider very ornamental grasslands in our own property that are native species. Yeah, those would be the primary concerns, and definitely the canopy trees. I would emphasize Chris's comment that not only is this an important corner, I think this is one of perhaps the most important corners in town. Yep, that's all I've got.
Great, thanks. For what it's worth, Chris, when we recently restored Stonebridge Park here in Monona, there was a massive tree in that park that we acknowledged. And it took extra effort by capital tree experts coming in and helping us out, but we were able to protect it. Literally with the entire ground being made, for all intents and purposes, into a swimming pool for the stormwater apparatus that was going in there. And it was no small amount of construction. So, certainly I know it's more effort, but if there are some healthy big trees there, take them.
Absolutely, and that's always a concern of ours. It's just that the three best candidates would be the ones that are in the existing sort of ground area on the west side, and those are the ones that are the least healthy. So, but I will definitely take another look at that.
I do have one other comment. This is actually more about public works with the parking, the street side parking. Is there any intention for us to control that parking, or is it going to be, like a metered or like 15-minute parking or something like that only, or is it just going to be anybody can use those stalls?
It'd be a public stall.
Okay.
Chris, were you going to say something about the trees?
I was. It'd be great to look at it, but the one thing about oaks, you just can't get into the root system. You got to almost stay out of the drip line. And there's certain things you can do. There's certain things you can inject to the roots to help when it does it. But to me, the trees right down where this entrance is, those are some of your worst trees. On the far west side, there might be a good one or two, but so much of the site is disturbed. You have to be really careful what you do with the roots around those.
Yeah.
And if they can put in some new trees, some nice sized trees, they'll look up there, they'll be much healthier. The only place I really thought they might save was that terrace, but depends how much work's going in on that terrace. Those were planted new at some point in time. One of them looks good, one of them's starting to see some, so they're just a really touchy tree.
Yeah, well, I think we're just saying, obviously if they're not worth, from a health standpoint, if they're not worth hanging on to, great, but if there's something worth.
We will be asking the applicant to take one more look and come back with a revised landscaping plan.
Yep. Okay. Brian?
Sure. Overall, wonderful project. I agree. Like, when you first came, I was pretty concerned with some of the initial kind of ideas, and I just really saw a hard time with the vision that you had at that time with some of the different strategies, and you've come a long ways, and you've taken a lot of the feedback and have come up with very, very creative solutions. So definitely commend you on all of the effort regarding that. It's been actually wonderful to see.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Let's see. I agree with a lot of the items that have been said, and I'm not going to necessarily repeat them just to repeat them. Actually, I have a clarifying question for Chris Homburg regarding the study where you talked about the intensity of the phosphorus coming through downspout and running through grassy area. Mm-hmm. Where that would be a difference is if we were sending it to a grassy area for pure infiltration where it wasn't going to run through and then back out into the storm drain, correct?
The study was where it ran, when you have this downspout, it's a very concentrated amount of water, and he had all the things. I'm sure Darren, I know Darren was at that NASICA conference, and they stripped the phosphorus out of that grass they run through, and he had the numbers. He had this thing plotted out in inches. And this amazing amount of phosphorus that ended up going into whether you had grate down here, end wall. And what's the point of adding all that phosphorus to the receiving body? Because if you don't, that's zero phosphorus there. And it seemed like in the study where you pull this phosphorus right out, then somehow with the grass and the leaves and everything, it would kind of replenish its own phosphorus. You just have this cycle keep washing phosphorus into the storm sewer. It's new. He's got work to do on it yet, but it was eye-opening, I thought.
So even if it was going to a basin to be able to infiltrate?
Well, if it infiltrated, but usually the downspout, majority of it runs off. Because there's way too much water to infiltrate. What'll infiltrate is what hits from the rain, and usually that pretty much takes care of the infiltration.
Saturates.
But when you have that concentrated flow, there's just way more water, and unless you're going into a rock dam or something like that, that's a different design.
Okay.
But where we changed our ordinance is like, well, direct that downspout over some grass before it gets into the storm sewer.
Yeah.
And this is saying, that's maybe it gets some infinitesimal little more infiltration, but you're adding all that phosphorus, so maybe that's not a good idea.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Let's see here. Land use, definitely thank you for the clarification regarding the ownership model for floors 1 and 2 and rental above. I think that makes perfect sense, and I think it captures what we talked about much earlier on in this project, and maintaining a really good commercial presence on the site. But like you walked the tightrope of how do you have a commercial presence on such a small site and also have enough residential to help support it. And I think this is just a very creative solution, so I amend that for sure. Design looks great. Ground floor is fine. I agree with the parking change for the 1 to 300 or the 1 to 400 versus the 300. Oftentimes we've had questions come up when we're having public parking on a street and how that is supportive of the need of the redevelopment. And I think what's unique with this site is to the south of your site, there's not going to be development. To the west of your site, that's all well-contained development. And the only possibility of any additional development in the near area that could possibly have any issue that would want to also share some of that public parking space on the street would be to your east, which those sites over there I think also have a similar footprint, similar size, but also have a similar kind of cut-in road, and there might be some future designs at some point. So I think what's unique here is I don't think there's a challenge in using these public stalls as part of the numbers to support the commercial space. I say that because across the street, we've had that issue regarding the parking on Bridge on the other side of the road. And half that road is Madison. And where some of those parking stalls got added at different times for different approvals, I think were challenging. And I just mentioned that because I don't think you have that same challenge. Architecture massing looks wonderful. Landscaping's been addressed. Other than that, that's all I have. I think it looks great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Chris?
Hi, Chris.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you? Yeah, as you noticed, I'm new to the commission. I think this is my third meeting, so I wasn't here for the preliminary stuff, but I'm really excited about this. I have, and at the risk of bringing up two topics that everyone else has already discussed, I've managed 2 condo associations that have indoor parking, and yes, it's true that simply adding a conduit, not a big deal to do the car charging. One of the condos I currently manage is facing this dilemma right now, and it's not about running the conduit, it's about the metering of the electricity to the individual unit owners, and we still haven't figured out how to do it. So I guess my comment is simply it's something to think about while you're in the design phase, like perhaps meter sockets. There are commercial third-party solutions like ChargePoint that just take care of the billing and all of that stuff, even the charging station itself. So there are lots of options out there. I don't know if you've explored any of those yet.
Yeah, so typically what we'll do is we'll have a separate meter stack for the bikes, which will be on the house meter, and then each one of the separate. So right now we're planning on having eight different car charging stations. and those would be metered separately, and then if somebody wants that stall, then for their car, then that would get assigned to them. And
Okay.
the usage that would get billed back. ChargePoint, I think, is great, but it's just, I think it's just easier just to have a separate meter stack
Sure.
for this stuff.
Sure.
But great, that's a great question.
And then, so speaking of condos, I'm still a little confused about this project in the sense of leasing versus ownership. Am I correct when I say that every single one of these units can potentially be purchased, or are only some going to be condo units?
So the live work, the first and second floor, that's where we're starting right now. Is
Okay.
having those. So each one of those would be an individual condo unit. The third and fourth floor, that would be a separate condo unit, but those would be rentals. And then the parking would be the remaining condo unit.
And so the third and fourth floor will forever be rental?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No. For the short term, yes, unless Jason finds buyers for all of them.
Oh, I mean, I can find you buyers for all of them. I mean, there's such a shortage of condos. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned you don't want any of these to be empty, but that won't be, I mean, you could sell them now before you even build.
Yeah, and I think when I said I don't want those empty, what I was speaking more specifically to the lower level on the first floor, because again, you know, I'm fighting this vision I had 2 years ago, right? We just want this really active, vibrant first floor, and that's why, you know, to Chris's point too, you know, some guy puts a pool table in there that he uses on the weekends, that's not accomplishing it. But, you know, we do think that with the interest that we're getting in the types of uses, I really think we're going to get there on the first floor, right? So, you know, if we have some vacancies on the third or fourth floor, you know, it doesn't have that big of an impact as it would on the streetscape. Does that make sense?
It does. I hope some of the upstairs units will be condos, you know? Not everybody but is into a live work thing, but there's a lot of people out there looking for a condo.
Jason, do you want to address that?
If you do, Jason, I would ask that you come up to the mic.
You know, I just,
haven't thought about it, to be frank.
Yeah.
That's not really part of our purview right now.
I mean, developers and investors love to build apartments because you make money forever. And I mean, I get that. I like to make money too. There's a massive shortage of condos. Not just in Monona, but the whole Madison area.
And I dare say that's one of the reasons why we raised it here, because we're obviously have developed a lot of apartments, right, in the last year in Monona, especially in the last 5 or 6 years. And
Test.
and there's, I feel the same way. I hear from people all the time that are looking for condos. There is a shortage.
Test.
Yeah, and we can definitely, we can definitely pursue that. You know, we just finished up a condo project downtown. We've got another under construction right now. I think, you know, without, you know, to Chris's point, yeah, everybody's building these apartments.
Right.
We don't. I want to say this properly without sounding difficult, but you know, we want to provide a different option for people. Right? Just a different way to live. And we understand that there's a housing shortage. And we understand that a lot of these are, you know, institutional money and commodity projects. You know, we get that. But we do want to make some changes, positive changes here with this stuff too. So, you know, absolutely, that's something that we can certainly pursue as well.
Yeah. Great.
That's all I got. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Sue?
Everything's pretty much been covered. I would echo what's already been said in terms of really wanting to like this project when you first brought it, but being a little worried about it. And I think you have done a great job, so I'm happy with it. I agree with changing the wording of that finding of fact, just to make it really clear that there's language that says it's deemed appropriate because business owners live on the location, creating less need. I mean, something real clear about that. I also agree with narrowing the parking lanes. I think it makes sense, because when I drove it today again to look at it, to me it feels narrow, and I just think the roadway, that narrowing those parking lanes on the roadway makes a lot of sense, just to add a little feet. I don't really think it's going to add speeding if you add another 2 feet to the lane, the roadway. Just aside, in terms of the Japanese maple, I've heard from a master gardener that there's a Korean maple that's much more hardy for Wisconsin weather, so it might be something to look into if you want that color. They are beautiful trees. It depends on where you're going to put it. And the only other question I have really, I guess one is, you mentioned that you want control of the color of the lighting. Can you say more about that, or what your thinking was about that?
So there's so many options out there with LEDs right now. And unfortunately, I want to get one of these color changing, at least at the entry, right? And just go out there with remote control and stand across the street and just mess around with the remote and see what kind of effects we can get on those lights. So I just think it would be interesting to, either change them seasonally or have them on a timer where they, something would happen throughout the day or throughout the evening. Just to give some options to really have some interesting impact on that corner.
Yeah. And given that with anything like that, it would need to come back to create a problem or something.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, I didn't see where ADA parking is located on your parking plans. I'm sure you have a plan for it, but I just couldn't find it on that.
Yep. So that's in the lower level. That's where we have our van.
So on the underground?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's all underground, okay. I just missed where it was. All right. That's all, really. I think that was it. Looks great.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Let me just echo that I think this is huge. Major improvements. Really appreciate you listening. And Lord only knows you've seen us a lot in the last year, so. And
every time it was.
And every time it's been worth it. Hopefully for you and for us. Certainly for us, because you've listened, and we really appreciate it. And I think it's exciting. Exciting for the city. So with that, I will entertain the motion.
Okay, I move approval as written by staff, change the finding of fact at the end of this is deemed appropriate given, follow that with given the owners of the businesses live above the workspace, which lessens the demand for employee parking. Conditions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as written by staff. Condition 7, add to what's written, including a potential of the 7-stall parking lot addition. Condition 8, that the final review of the revised street striping and approval be by City Council. Condition 9, that the workspace restrictions come back to the Plan Commission for review and approval. Condition 10, that the final configuration of the corner at Bridge Road and the frontage road returns to the Plan Commission for review and approval. Condition 11, that the additional hydrant be reviewed and approved by city staff. Condition 12, that the revised landscaping plan, including additional canopy trees, comes to Plan Commission for review and approval. And condition 13, if the glare of the lighting becomes an issue, additional restrictions, if the glare or intensity of the additional lighting becomes an issue, additional restrictions may be imposed by Plan Commission.
I think I got them all.
Second.
I wanted to ask about sort of the good faith.
We need a second
Second.
first.
I need a second. I need a second.
Second. And then I have a question.
Got a
too.
second on it?
Okay.
Now, go ahead.
Just the addition about like a good faith assessment about the existing trees.
Well, yeah, I think that's part of the revised landscaping plan, including canopy trees, comes to Plan Commission. That's why I had to come back to Plan Commission, because there he is. You're missing. Because that way he can report on that also.
Yeah.
And then I would ask the applicant if you have any questions about the additional conditions. You haven't seen them till tonight. Okay, I added that last one, Sue, because of your item. I think it's neat to have some really creative, cool lighting, but if it becomes like a really traffic issue, look, it looks like a signboard or something, we're going to have to say time out. You know, we need to tone it down a little bit. So that just gives us the ability to review it if it becomes an issue. And just so you understand, most of the conditions where you come back to Plan Commission, that doesn't slow down your process. You can still get a building permit as long as you're comfortable with these conditions. You're comfortable, you can come back with a landscaping plan we're going to like, Bridge Road corner that we're going to like. And I know Darren is in here listening. You know, we talked about some of the things like we're not going to require any more green infrastructure when we're that close on the reduction in impervious, because it was a substantial reduction in impervious. And, you know, something like that, you don't get the same sense as what we said or what Darren says. You always have the right to come back and have it reviewed. But the reason most of these come back, they're minor ones. As long as you're comfortable with us, you can go right ahead and just bring these back when it's timely before you have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to, could you repeat your condition 9? I just didn't catch one.
9, I think I flubbed it the first time I said it. The workspace restrictions come back to Plan Commission for review and approval. That's the workspace restrictions.
Yeah.
What are you going to have in there so once you sold this unit,
But
what's it going to say so it's not the ping pong table or pool table, not the rec room?
That makes sense. I just didn't hear it, so that's perfect.
I had a question about that too, because I thought that at our last meeting when we discussed that, the discussion was that that wasn't really in our realm of.
Oh, no. That's in our realm because we've talked about from the beginning that we wanted to be true commercial space and not a rec room.
Okay. So, okay, all right.
And there is some overlap between the building code and how it gets classified, which gives it a little bit of teeth, but you guys ultimately will have that.
Okay.
That enforceability.
All right. I have one other question too. Do we need to add a finding of fact to the point that Brian made about the use of the public street right-of-way to meet the parking requirements, given the location on the corner?
It's not a bad idea. If we had additional finding of fact number 2, that we are allowing the public right-of-way parking to be used in this instant because there is no reasonable user located anywhere near this project that would have a use for that parking.
Is that a friendly amendment to your?
Well, I did it, so would have to say, yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
But it's not a bad idea, because a lot of people want to use,
idea.
a lot of people want, it's a good idea, a lot of people want to use the right-of-way, and this is the one time we said, no one else is going to be able to use this right-of-way. And we have this wide right-of-way, because that was going to be the main frontage road that went all the way past WPS, it was. But then WPS decided to redo their campus, they detoured it and cut it off, otherwise this would have been going all the way through the south town, that's why it's such a wide right-of-way.
Okay, good catch, Corey. Good amendment. Anything else on the motion that's on the floor? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Chris.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks to everybody. It's just been a great process. It's got a great group to work with, and the staff and you guys, and
Good.
public works, so thank you again.
Yeah. Terrific, thank you.
I forgot to thank you for the 24 by 36, it makes it a lot easier.
So that was Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good evening. With that, we're going to move to item number 5C, public hearing on the request by the Monona Grove School District, represented by Spaceco Inc. for approval of zoning permit for parking lot and playground improvements at 5301 Monona Drive, case number 2-018-2022.
And I'll recuse myself.
Thank you, Susan. Who is here from the school districts? Yeah.
Just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yes, thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Yes. Good. My name is Ted Ford. I'm with Spaceco Engineering. I think I'm also joined here tonight by Jeff Carr, who is the Facilities and Safety Supervisor for the Monona School District.
Great. What would you like to share with us since the last time you were here about the plan?
Yeah, so thanks for having us again so soon. We really appreciate it. You should have received an updated set of plans that is not final at this point because we have received additional engineering review comments from Gary that we'll be addressing after this next meeting. But to recap where we've been so far on this, engineering comments, as I said, we received from Darren the day of our latest plan submittal. We have no issues with the comments in his letter and plan to address all of those comments in full. The Plan Commission had comments for us on proposed landscape, and discussing that with the school. They thought it would be a good idea to complete the landscape design in a collaborative effort with the school students and Plan Commission. And this also works in a practical sense of actually installing those landscape improvements in a better time of year for that later this fall. Another issue brought up by the Plan Commission last meeting was about meeting the new Dane County stormwater ordinance, which we had not accounted for in our original submittal. We have started to address that by the implementation of a bioinfiltration basin in one of the larger islands. We have a couple of comments regarding that, mostly about providing, I believe, the electronic data that we used in the windslam modeling, and that will be provided to Darren. And then the final comment was related to lighting. We had originally proposed an expansion of the existing parking lot lighting to account for the widening of the drive aisle where the bus lane will be now. And based on the comments received and that the widening of the drivable pavement area is relatively minor, school district believes that the existing lighting will suffice and allow that to be a conditional approval that lighting may be necessary or additional lighting may be necessary in the future. So with that, the school district is requesting Plan Commission approval conditional to the engineer's approval, landscape approval post-construction, and the potential for future lighting.
Thank you. Anyone else here to offer thoughts on the public hearing portion of this request? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and go to item 5D, consideration of action on the request by Monona Grove School District represented by School Inc. for approval of zoning permit for parking lot and playground improvements at 5301 Monona Drive, case number 2-018-2022.
Right. So, this site is part of the Community Design District, and both current and future land use maps show it as government or institutional uses, so that doesn't change at all since the school use isn't changing. As mentioned, the plan is to make changes to the existing parking lot, and there's no net change in the amount of impervious surface, but some of the comments about meeting the newer stormwater requirements are being addressed, including with the bioretention basin. Just to cover a couple of things, there are 107 stalls with 3 ADA stalls included. Last time at the pre-hearing conference, the commission was generally comfortable with this parking allocation. There are no building improvements, and as stated, the stormwater comments from Darren would need to be addressed. And then, yes, as the applicant said, there is currently no changes planned to the lighting, but that's something that the commission may wish to discuss and could be something that comes back to plan or staff if it becomes an issue in the future. The one thing I did want to point out is that there is not a landscaping plan included right now. There had been some discussion about there potentially being some collaborative efforts between the students at MGE21 and doing some of the landscaping. So if the applicant has any more information about that, they might be able to help, but the commission may wish to discuss if they would want to see a landscaping plan in the future and what that might look like with student input on the plan. I think those are all the main points. Staff recommendation is approval with the conditions as written in the staff report.
Thank you very much.
Nice job.
Before I turn it over to the commission, media, I don't suppose that we've got Darren hooked in. Community media?
Let's let Darren try.
Can we try this again?
Hey.
Worked. Woo!
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Awesome. Thank you, community media. Darren, go ahead.
Okay. Just a few comments. I guess on the ADA parking stalls, I just wanted to mention that per the ADA requirements, if the plan showed 100 stalls there per ADA guidelines, there should be 4 accessible parking spaces, one of them van accessible. In my review comment letter, I did show a proposed way to add that additional stall in, and also noticed that the southernmost stall didn't seem to have an accessible aisle next to it. So with some restriping, I think that you can get there to meet that requirement. And then, let's see. In terms of stormwater management, I'm just backing up one, to the electric vehicle. I know that this project doesn't include any changes to pavement near the building where the electrical source would come from. But if there was any, and I know the Planning Commission has been suggesting conduit being installed on other projects. I just wanted to put the thought out there that maybe installing some conduits near some parking spots in the new parking area might be considered, or in the future, if the driving lanes near the building get repaved, that the conduit can then be extended to the building for connection. But I'll defer that to the Planning Commissioners for final comments on that. And then I think stormwater-wise, I think the addition of the bioretention basin is going to is a means to provide the sediment reduction that's going to be needed. And then I guess I just like to see in the memo that was done on stormwater that a drainage area map be shown, and maybe some more pages of the report that show the slam modeling, especially showing the configuration. And I think it's important to indicate on the drainage map and in this slam model if there are portions of that new parking area that are not being captured by a retention basin, so we can see how much area goes to it and then what's being bypassed, and make sure that that model accurately portrays that. That it is, because I don't think from looking at the grading that follows that stormwater drainage from a new parking area is going to make it to that bioretention basin. But so a drainage map would be helpful to illustrate that. And then, calculations were provided to show that the first half inch of runoff from the impervious area would be with the volume of the bioretention basin has enough volume to do that. So I think it's just a matter of showing in the drainage area map that that's going to happen. And then you're reducing the impervious area, so rate control will be naturally that way. And then had some recommendations about how to maybe make the bioretention basin a little bit better. Using coconut matting instead of mulch and so forth. And then I guess the last thing was I didn't know if I didn't see any vehicle circulation analysis done. It was parking lot. One of the ideas was to make the circulation better for buses. So I think it would be, prudent to take a look at that and take a look at the circulation using auto turn. And then also for the city's largest fire truck, we often be part of that too, to make sure that we can get through there. So, I think that in a nutshell, my comments. If anybody has any questions, I can answer them.
Sure. Thanks very much. Glad you're with us. With that, Chris, would you like to start?
Sure. First, Darren, piggyback on what you said, I agree. I don't think a quarter of this lot gets to that biobasin, so I don't know, we're getting 70, whatever it was, 77% reduction on the site. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not suggesting we need to put in more, but I think it's, I mean, if you look at their own drainage arrows, there's 2 curb depressions, and the one on the right or the east is at a high point. So anything that's short of that goes out the way it always has, and the stuff on the other side of the road, if it doesn't hit that opening, it goes out. So I think there's a lot of parking lot that doesn't get into that biobasin. So I just think we should have accurate numbers. I don't think we should make a huge deal about it, but it should be accurate. And as biobasin goes, Darren, 30/70 is a pretty rich mix anymore. Most of the stuff that we've been working with and the DNR has been specifying has been 15%, maybe 20% compost, and the rest sand. They've had a lot of problems with them plugging, and they've had a lot of better experience with the lower compost, but it depends on what plantings you're putting in there too. Your landscape architect's going to have to say, hey, this plant could live in a 15% compost or 20%. When you get up to 30%, we've seen a lot of plugging. So it's just a suggestion there. I agree we need a landscape plan. It needs to come back to Planning Commission. And we need to see the lighting plan. This is a school, for goodness sake, and a bus unloading. We just need to know that we have adequate lighting there. So I would say that they both need to come back. No issues whatsoever with working with the kids and coming up with a landscape plan. And you tell us when a good date is for you. Right now suggested October 11th. If that works, if it has to be pushed a little bit, let us know, but I think we need to see a landscape plan, lighting plan.
Okay.
That's it.
Cody?
I think it would be pretty great for the students to come and bring the landscaping plan to us too. So that would be a good experience, I think, for them. So I think that's great, but I have no other comments.
Okay.
Just echoing Chris, the landscaping plan and the lighting plan.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Brian?
No issues.
Good. Chris?
I'm good. Well, I guess I'm just going to become Mr. EV charging guy on this commission, but it's the opportune time to make those spaces EV charging capable. I feel like in 10 years or less, most of us are going to have electric cars. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's definitely the future.
Yeah.
Yes, Chris.
Could I ask where, on this plan with what they're disturbing, where would you put it?
Closest to the spots closest to the building, I guess.
And that's a bus loading and unloading lane, so you can't put charging stations there. So, I mean, I agree with the comment. I just don't see a reasonable place to put it right now. I don't know where they come out of the building. I think when they do, it'd be a project when they rebuild the old parking lot.
Okay.
Solar charging stations eventually, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Because I obviously, it's no surprise to anyone here that I agree with Chris that, and I think we all agree, if we can find the right place for the conduit, the time to do it is when you're tearing up pavement or moving pavement. But it is more challenging because of the bus route.
I'm good.
I actually want to add a comment just about the electric vehicle charging. What about buses themselves? You know, in terms of, I know they probably are limited use, and so like where like the yard is probably the, but it's just a vehicle type that, you know, I'm wondering what the implementation plan is for when we get to the point of our school buses are also electric. I actually would anticipate the bus itself might be electric before you've got the broader implementation of personal vehicles.
Yeah, I would agree. I think we're getting closer to that. Yeah, Chris?
You wouldn't need any conduit. If they're going to stack right here, you'd bring it out of the building and come right on the side there, so there's no place to put conduit in case it goes there. I mean, you could put it in, but it might not go there.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you want to charge it, it'll be right on the near side.
Yep.
Even though I have to recuse myself, can I take a comment about that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Which is simply that we contract out the busing services to Nelson's, and there are no variety buses staying in that area. They literally like drop kids off and leave. So there's no storage there. Long-term parking.
Although, does the blue bus stay there?
The blue bus stays there, right?
So eventually the blue bus could be an electric blue bus.
That's sacrilege, talking about getting rid of the blue bus. I'm sorry, I just said that's sacrilege, talking about getting rid of the blue bus. It's famous.
I know it is. I know it is, but, just knowing how challenging it was to get it started during the State games, I just, I think eventually we might be looking at that, but, okay. Do I, Brian, anything?
Actually, the only thing I was thinking about is the date regarding landscaping plan. Given that students are going to return just after September 1st, I think October 11th, if it's going to be a plan that's contributed by
Pretty
students,
tight.
that's going to be way too tight. I would be okay if it was by sometime in the late winter, early spring, so that way it could be a spring planting.
It might as well be spring. They're not going to plant anything in the winter.
Yeah. So I don't see we need to plan back any time before March. That gives plenty of time for it to be a school project and plenty of time to be designed and contribute to for a spring planting. So.
Okay, do I have a motion?
I'll move approval as written by staff, conditions 1, 2, and 3. Condition 4, site lighting come back to Plan Commission for review and approval. And 5, that a landscape plan comes back to Plan Commission for review and approval by April of 2023.
I second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Is that
And I think one of the things that we talked about last time is the need for them to proceed, even with coming back with these items, they would be able to proceed.
absolutely?
Yes.
Would you like to delay the lighting plan when it has to come back? I mean, they can start, but they have to eventually get an approved lighting plan. I think that's important with all the new pavement rules. And they might be able to do it with the standards they have. We just don't know. There's nothing to show us it works.
Yeah, and given that the previous plan showed some of it, I think it would be fine if it was before completion of the parking lot.
Do we need to put a date on it? It's a condition of approval.
Yeah.
So before the case is closed, they have to have that back. And I guess if I were them, the sooner the better, because then I know what I need, and I know if I need some conduit under the new pavement. So for me, if I'm putting it in, I'd like to know I don't have to put conduit under there for another base location. I think we leave that up to them, the timing.
Yeah.
And we don't want to, even though there's no place there, since they are going to be running conduit for lights, there's no place that you could see for putting conduit for EVs.
I think we have had a heavy recommendation to that, and I think, I suspect if I were them, I'd consider it and look at it before I put the pavement back in.
Okay.
For me, I think that electric vehicle charging stations, you want to keep them away from the building. So for me, it would be when you rebuild this lot, keep them down in here somewhere so
Right. Okay.
that they're not parked all the time.
Okay. All right, so I have a motion on the floor and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Ted.
We used to have 24 emergencies all the time. Just keep it going. Every 2 people.
So I'd like to move to
You can probably see all these small numbers.
item number 5E, public hearing on the request by Joel Tennessee for approval and updated landscape and parking plans and exterior upgrades conditioned by the approved zoning permit at 915 Femright Drive, case number 2-026-2021. Joel, come on up to the mic if you would. Welcome back. Floor is yours.
So, went back to my videos for our last meetings. took all your suggestions into mind, and I updated all the plans and got started on work. So I'm just kind of here for the final approval.
Okay, great. Is there anyone else here that is here for the public hearing portion of Joel's request? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing section. And we'll move to F, consideration of action on the request by Joel Dunsing for approval of updated landscaping, parking plans, and exterior upgrades conditioned by the approved zoning permit at 915 Femright Drive, case number 2-026-2021. So I would just say before we start that I would ask the commission's consideration that we, as a commission, are very specific about our motion coming out of this to hopefully prevent Joel from having to come back and from just thinking that more specific we can get about what we want from him. That hopefully the majority of what we have left could be left to staff approval. I would ask you to consider that as a possibility, as opposed to coming back to the commission. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth.
Yeah, so this zoning permit was approved back in January of this year, and so right now we're just looking at specifically three of the conditions of that zoning permit that required additional plan commission review. So the first of those conditions is the landscaping plan, which is required to come back. So there are 24 proposed parking stalls on site, which would require 360 landscaping points and 2 canopy trees. So there is a landscaping plan included that shows various canopy trees on site, along with some shrubs as well that are in the back. The big hedges in the front of the lot have been removed, and so I think the one thing that the commission may wish to discuss is that if there's any additional landscaping that they would like on the front of the lot to obstruct headlight glare, which is part of the code. So something to discuss. As Nancy mentioned, if there are further revisions could be required, they could come back to Plan Commission or could be staff approval. The second condition that required Plan Commission review was the parking lot plan, which has also been included in the packet. As I said, there are 24 total parking stalls. 21 of those have been designated as either employee or retail vehicle parking. And then there are 3 that are designated for customer parking, which are all along the front of the building. So per the parking code, only 12 parking stalls are required, so we've got plenty above the code requirement. And then just to point out that ADA, the state regulation for ADA stalls starts at lots that have more than 26 stalls. So there isn't, with 24 parking stalls, there isn't an ADA stall included in the parking plan. Another comment that came out of previous Plan Commission discussions was the size of the parking stalls. So there are both 9x18 and 8x16 stalls. 9x18 is the more standard one. And the customer, so before Plan Commission had mentioned that, because most of these stalls will likely be taken up by the retail vehicles and wouldn't necessarily be people coming in and out frequently, that smaller stalls might be appropriate. And then the customer stalls in the front of the building are shown on the parking plan as the 8x16, slightly smaller size, but there is significant space shown between all of them, so the commission can decide if those are appropriate or not. And then the third condition is the exterior improvements. So many of these have already begun. There's the door has been repainted. There's been cleaning of the brick facade and taking off some of the sort of dirt and everything else that was from the previous use. And then there's no signage included right now, but I believe the intent is that when signage is proposed in the future, it would cover up some of the painting, the sort of differences in paint color on the top of the facade. So those are the three main conditions that we should discuss tonight, and if the Plan Commission is ready to approve all of that, there is a drafted motion with some conditions in the staff report.
Great.
That's all.
Thank you very much. Again, excellent job.
Thanks.
I'm going to start down in this end again since I'm not sure that we were, Chris, I know you weren't here when Joel first said, so Chris, go ahead.
Okay, I have no problem with the parking plan. If you're happy with that, it works. And you have enough big stalls. The landscaping is inadequate. We talked about actually adding to those hedges in front, not removing them all. So you need to have some type of a hedge or something between your parking and Femright Drive.
Yeah, there's nothing in the code that requires that.
Well, we require landscaping between a building and a road. And I challenge you to find a place where it parks in there. It is in the code about headlights.
Yeah, so
And it was also about when the neighbors came and talked about it, and something we asked for. So for me, there has to be a hedge, and it has to come across the front and turn into that island the way it used to. And I'll be happy to hear from everybody else. For me, there should be one significant canopy tree up there somewhere. I mean, I know you have a ton of landscape in the back. That doesn't do any good for the building from Femright Drive.
Sure. So screening standards for parking areas near residentially zoned parcels or streets. Number one, in the following situations, there shall be a screening barrier for the purpose of obstructing light beams and muffling noise. A, where an off-street parking area of 4 or more vehicles abuts within 25 feet of an adjoining lot line in a single-family zoning district. Not applicable. B, where an off-street parking for 4 or more vehicles is located in a manner where nearby residential zoning properties would be affected by a headlight glare.
Joel, honestly,
i.e. directly across the public right-of-way. And it fits neither of those.
Joel, Chris is expressing his opinion, as will the rest of the commission, and we have the right to make that request of you. And so it doesn't, that it's not exactly spelled out the way you think it should be spelled out in our ordinance.
So it has nothing to do with my interpretation of the ordinance. I mean, it's like black and white, word for word, it spells it out. It's not an interpretation.
And we're spelling out to you, or we may spell out to you that you need to do something different in order to get approval. It's that simple.
Joel?
People are having trouble hearing him.
Yeah, would you just mind moving the mic a little bit closer? Hopefully that helps. Thanks.
So, Chris, is there anything else? There were 3. One was landscaping, the other was parking, and the third was building condition. Is there anything else on the building?
I'm fine if we can get the landscaping.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
And then one other thing regarding Christmas. So another thing that's written word for word in your zoning code. The intent, however, is to provide landscaping park areas which are planned to design a blending with the overall community appearance. The standard requirements do not attempt to fully screen or hide parking areas. So he's attempting to fully screen and hide my parking area. He knows that it's for a used car dealership, so fairly important. And then there's nowhere on Femright that is similar to this. So it's like immediately across the street is a church. They have parking facing me with no screening whatsoever. Immediately next door to me, there's no screening to the street there. Up and down Femright is business after business without this type of coverage that he's proposing, and I do. So it's like, I guess I'd like to see where and why you would single me out for this type of treatment.
Well, as far as the church, that's not in Monona.
That church is in Monona?
Nope. That's Blooming Grove. So.
So one of the businesses on Femright. I took pictures of a bunch of them if you care to see them.
I'll take you up and down Monona Drive if you'd like to look, where we've done it on every one of the businesses where the parking goes towards the road. Every one. This is not, you're property is very poorly landscaped between the building and the road. And landscaping is a requirement of a conditional use permit.
So if it's a requirement, it should be in the code, correct? Like, you should be able to show me a requirement.
Should we
Joel?
just table it and then find places in the code to throw it in next time?
Yeah, you know, that's a possibility if you keep this up. I mean, we have a responsibility, as we've explained the other times that you've been here, we have a responsibility to do our due diligence and review of this, and it's not about arguing over the ordinances. Okay?
This was the landscape plan of the dog swimming pool. And
Joel, we're not going to go there again. We've already been there. We've already been there. We've already been there. Okay. Corey, do you have anything you'd like to?
So, Joel, is your concern that you think we're trying to hide your business? Is that what your concern is?
Well, I guess hide the business, devalue the property because it's not very appealing, and then obviously give me a hard time because at one point Chris was telling stories how he led the crusade against used car dealerships all throughout Monona because they dirtied up the city in the 70s or something like that. Right? You told me that story.
So, okay. So that's not what we're trying to do. You were here for the other, you saw the landscaping plan they presented us, and a lot of the comments we gave them was about their landscaping. So this is something that is consistent from meeting to meeting. We're not signaling you out. We're not attempting to hide your used cars. We don't have a problem. We approved your permit with these conditions of approval. However, we did have a number of other residents of the city come forward, and one of the things I know we talked about at a prior meeting was the one small thing that you can do to help appease their minds was to make the property look better. And I drove past it. You've done that. The door looks better. The sandblast or the water, what the pressure washing you've done, that looks better. Landscaping is beautiful. It adds to the value. We are asking you to just do that next step.
I'm not against landscaping, but if he's trying to tell me I need a 3.5-foot wall that runs edge to edge on the property, there's no way. It's inappropriate with the neighborhood. There's nowhere in Monona that looks like that.
I'm not sure if it needs to be a hedge. I think it could be grasses. I think it could be.
Yeah.
That is.
The parking lot stands anywhere from 2 to 2.5 feet below the sidewalk as it is. So when it comes down to it, if anyone's concerned with it, first off, what glare are we talking about? Cars that are sitting stationary and not being driven. So there's no glare here. This
Joel, we didn't. There wasn't a specification by Chris or anyone else over the exact hedge or the height of the hedge or whatever. It was about the fact that the landscaping that currently exists is behind the building. And the purpose of landscaping is to beautify the lot, is to improve, as Corey said, the overall attraction of the lot. And so when it's all sitting behind your building, that does nothing in terms of improving or supporting some of the neighbors' concerns, which is where we're coming from beginning when we made the recommendation. So
do you have, have there been new concerns since the very first, when we went in, I know there was 11 emails or something, have there been new concerns since then? Because I can tell you this, as me and my family have been out there working, probably at least a half of those people have stopped and commented that it looks so much better and it's 1,000 times better than it was. And
that's terrific. That's going in the right direction.
And that's
that
what I
doesn't
just
negate
said.
the fact that we're looking for landscaping from you.
Sure.
Additional
The lady came over
landscaping.
from the condos and was like, hey, you know what? She said that she was one of the people that sent in the letter, and she's like, I'm glad that you got it, and whatever, you're doing your thing. She appreciated what we've done to the building so far. She likes it.
So one of the conditions of approval was for us to approve a landscaping plan. This probably, not going to speak for everyone, will not get approved. We're asking you just to submit something.
How about I ask Chris to draw me an acceptable landscape plan, and then I'll approve that? Because apparently without his blessing, nothing's going to happen.
I also don't think these are.
This is a full commission who spoke with unanimously at the last meeting about a need for a landscaping plan. This is not a landscaping plan. So and Corey's speaking again, you're acting, it's an insult to Corey, not to mention the rest of the commission members, to say that this is, a request or somehow a demand of one person on this commission. We requested it before. It's not, we've heard from 2 commission members, and we'll continue to hear from the rest of the commission now about it. But as we said before, you're not doing yourself any favors by, we're trying to do you a favor by putting you in the best possible situation in terms of the success of your business, by beautifying by taking care of the property and by increasing the value of the property and its attractiveness for you to do business, and also be reflective of what's important to us as a commission for businesses here in Monona. As Chris said, you can go up and down Monona Drive and see virtually every single lot has exactly what we're talking about here. So with that, I'll go to the next commission member.
I don't have any new comments to add. I just agree with the disposition of the prior commission members.
Thank you. Brian?
I have a question regarding the parking plan between between the 2 8x16 stalls. Do you know approximately the distance between those 2 stalls?
I don't. Let me just figure that out, because 24 gets me to, I don't know where the 26 came from. As far as Wisconsin statute, it looked like 25 was when an ADA stall comes in. So 24 gets me to under the ADA requirement, so it was basically 3 up there. There's enough space for 8 probably, but 3 and wherever they would get, just take a...
What I'm looking at is the distance between the marking of this stall and the marking of this stall. Wouldn't you by default be marking a stall between them?
Well, I guess depending on the distance between them.
So I don't know how we wouldn't count that as a stall.
So you prefer them side by side? But then it defeats the point of them having additional turning space, because that was Chris's requirement last time.
Well, I think the requirement, because they're slightly more narrow and slightly not as deep, there was some concern, but I think really what you're trying to lay out here is by default a way to get 1, 2, 3, 4 stalls on one side by only striping 2 stalls, and 2 stalls on the other side of the entry by only striping 1 stall. Do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I guess you can interpret any way you like. When it comes down to it, here's just a fact of life. I've worked at a number of dealers all through Madison, ones that have hundreds and hundreds of cars on the lot, sold thousands of cars, dealt with 10,000 customers. 90% of them won't park in a parking spot. They'll drive the aisle until they see the car they want, stop it right there. No parking space, they're going to hop out, sales guy gets to them and talks to them. That's just the facts of life. I could have 100 designated customer parking stalls, and they won't get used. Somebody's going to just cruise in, oh, the red one, that's what I'm here for. Stop right in front of the red one, and just have a look at it. That's the way it works. So yeah, those were the 3, gets to the 24, keeps them under the ADA. It provided a width between them, so to, ease his mind as far as pulling in and out of those stalls, as far as 8x16, even though it's written beyond 12, they can be 8x16. To give them additional space.
So one consideration then would be to hatch between those so they are seen as not parking.
Sure, different color or whatever. Yeah, when it comes down to it, it's totally fine. Not a big deal.
Yeah. So if we were to kind of move forward with this striping plan, I'd want us to indicate that the areas between these parking stalls are marked in a way that indicate they are not parking stalls. And I'm okay with any type of reconfiguration. If you're looking for 3 customer stalls at the front of the building, that if you want to put all 3 of them on the one side and allow a 2-foot buffer between them and hash mark that, I'm quite all right with that. But what I wouldn't be okay with is by default not marking between these stalls, providing additional parking, and getting going above the number of stalls that would trigger ADA accessibility, because I would have a major concern with that.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Yeah, I got no problem with that. I have no interest in parking anything I own in front of the building, because
Sure.
we're going to leave the front of the building open. It would be there for someone to pull in, it's just a convenience spot, you pull in the driveway, pull in the park. Likelihood of a customer actually parking there, well, it's not up to me to control that. They're going to park where they're going to park, but those would be left open for customers to pull in the park, right next to the front door.
Yeah, and I remember you talked about the majority of your customer is really by appointment from where you're starting at.
Correct.
As it comes to landscaping plan, I would say actually I have been looking at the work that you've been doing. I think it is an improvement in the space. I think you have done some nice pieces, and this next step of really looking at what is it that you do out front that helps provide that finishing touch for that front area. And when I look, and I just pulled up quickly to see kind of where are we along Femrite and some of the other businesses that have parking that is not pointing towards the street, so it's parallel with the street. You can tell the requirement of the landscaping between that lot and the road. It's much more kind of interspersed. There's still some plantings, but it's not as solid. Most of the places, actually all along Femrite there, that have any parking that is pointing towards the street has a more solid effect, but they're not necessarily all solid, all 3.5 feet or whatever. I would also agree that your lot is lower than that sidewalk, and there is some distance between them. But I think there's a landscaping plan that you could put together that doesn't block your business, provides an attractive area to that front, and still allows the effect that we're trying to get here, which is a nice looking property from the front, a reduction in any glare, even though all of these vehicles are going to be coming and going very infrequently, unless you're highly successful and they're flying up the lot. But they're intended to stay there, so I'm not looking for a solid hedge. Other than that, those are the comments I have at this point. Do you have any questions based on?
No question. I mean, it was all really reasonable. So I live 1 mile exactly from that building.
Yeah.
And so I drive from American Drive. So it's like from Monona Drive, immediately when you turn down there. Do you remember where there was, it must have been like one house sitting on a large lot and they demolished it for like 4 tall houses. Immediately across the street from there is an apartment complex. Most cars park facing there. I mean, I pulled in the driveway there, turned on my lights, like shine right in somebody's living room phone. I took a picture of it, but I don't know that anyone is interested in that. The next one down, the cemetery, on the one side, the parking facing across from my drive, no hedgerow there either. On and on. I mean, I took pictures of it all. So to say that 100% of Femrite is shielded from the road and I'm the only exception to not, it's probably closer to the other way around, that this would be the exception to force some sort of a shielding along Femrite Drive. I'm not against some plantings when it comes down to it. There's nowhere in the code that I saw that it was based on my usage and based on what's immediately around me that it's not required. And then next to that, what I have is appropriate for the businesses that surround me. I mean, there's beautiful green spaces. Like, I imagine if any or most of you live in homes, you have lawns and you cut your grass and stuff like that. You don't have a 3.5-foot hedgerow between your house and the street. Probably plantings here and there, whatever. But for the most part, it's like people enjoy lawns, nice cut grass. I mean, there's a reason that we have green space places. So I think to have a strip of grass between the sidewalk and the parking lot isn't inappropriate. It's not against Monona because that's what is reflected immediately in my area.
I'm sorry, but, again, it's our responsibility as a commission to look at every application. As Corey pointed out when she was speaking a few minutes ago, there's not a single application that comes in front of us when we don't talk about landscaping. A minute ago, you sat through the entire meeting tonight when we were talking about the Populance development with Chris. He had the right number of landscaping points too. And, we made recommendations around it would be great to have some canopy trees. And, he didn't fight with us over the fact there wasn't canopy trees in the ordinance. Again, that's our responsibility as a commission to do what we feel is right for every applicant that's in front of us. And that's what we're trying to do here tonight.
Sure. So basically, if you could explain to me how this was suitable as a landscape plan for someone in my building months before me, this was approved in one meeting and sent to city staff approval after that. Then I buy the building, attempt to open the business months later, after this was approved in
It's an
Monona.
entirely different
8
business.
months later. But
Joe, we're not comparing your business to the other business. It's an entirely different business. It's a entirely different business.
Yeah, I
And
would- I
that
would create
approval
a
is
template
totally
for this
different than this
business.
approval. We take each application as it comes at the time that we receive it.
Sure.
And
So in their application, it said 10 to 15 customers a day and 1 to 4 full-time employees. It's not a lot of
Stop.
traffic when I have one
Joel,
employee and one
if you
customer.
want approval tonight, I recommend that you stop.
Well, I
and
mean,
listen.
it's not that I feel like we can talk about what's right, but it's like if you raise your voice and talk over me, it's about being right rather than doing right. So I would like to be able to talk about what's right.
I think we've seen you at least 3 times, so I think we've heard quite a bit, and I know that you've spent quite a bit of time with the city staff as well.
Yeah, it's
I'm just suggesting that it's not serving you or this purpose to continue to debate or argue over what the commission is offering.
Sure, and I think, I mean, one of the parts I really like was eye-opening for me was I never once watched any of these, like all this stuff took place, and you guys come here and volunteer your time, you do everything. Never once watched or paid attention or did anything with any of this stuff. It all just happened, right? And I didn't think anyone else watched it either. But after my second meeting, you wouldn't believe the number of people that I wouldn't even necessarily call like, they're not like friends, more like acquaintances, had come up and be like, holy cow, the city's giving you really effort. I'm like, people were mind blown. And I was like shocked at the number of people that actually watched these things. Like, I was like, holy cow, I never have time to watch any of that stuff. But it's like, yeah, the people like that have support for something like, holy cow, here's the little guy trying to do something. And it's like, because it's not a giant multi-million-dollar development with commercial and condos and apartments and whatever, somehow it just gets squashed. So that's a public.
I'm gonna ask the commission members to continue. Chris, go ahead.
All I will say is, in my brief tenure here, it's like my 3rd or 4th meeting, I've really taken notice to the amount of thought, consideration, scrutiny with respect to landscaping. We can all see how frustrated you are. It's obvious, but you seem to be taking it very personally. I don't feel like you're being treated any differently than anyone else. Everyone has to talk about their landscaping and abide by the suggestions of the commission with respect to landscaping. So I would advise you to play ball. I don't know. You know, that's if you want to get this going. You know, maybe don't fight so much and just play ball. That's all I would say.
I appreciate your input. I know you're new to it. I've never seen you or met you before. But when it comes down to it, like, I was very distinctly treated differently because this was approved in one meeting as a landscape plan. There's nothing here. There's no points. There's no landscape. And then it was referred to city staff for final approval. I'm here on my 3rd time in 8 months. My very first one, I supplied more information than this approval in the same exact building, and they were calling for 10 to 15
Joel,
customers per day.
we're not.
You seem to be very obsessed with that, and
Well, the fact that business A comes in a 915 Femride and it's just rubber stamped all the way through. It's like, oh, you're doing something with dogs? Awesome, dogs. Yeah, rubber stamp it. It comes right through. Used cars. You're like the scum of the earth. It's like Satan here is like selling used cars or something. So it's just like, how could that building...
Joel, are you interested in your application getting approved? Are you interested in being in business in this building now that you've put so much time and energy into it?
I mean, I don't know how to take that other than a threat.
What I'm saying is that if we're going to act on your proposal, you need to let us act on the proposal. We can't approve a proposal if you won't allow us to act on it. I mean, we're here for consideration of action tonight. We can't act. You can't act. You can't operate without our approval, and we can't go for approval if we keep arguing over this. So it's not a threat. I'm just saying, do you want to be in business? If you want to be in business, hear the commission out. We want you to be in business. That's why you're in front of us. We want you to be, and as we already said, we think what you've done with the building so far is great. We appreciate what you've done in the building. We appreciate your interest. So we're here, we're not here to block you. We're here to support you as a small business owner. Do what we think is right by you and for the city. But we can't act on it if we're going to continue to fight over it or debate over every time a commissioner offers their opinion. I could just only echo what Chris just said. I encourage you to play ball because we're in your court. Susan?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I was very pleased to drive by and see what you've done. You've done a lot of work. It looks a lot better. When the previous plan was approved, that never happened, there were bushes along the front. Personally, I thought they looked pretty bad. But they were going to stay there, and we talked a little bit about maybe adding something later, but they were not planning to pull them out. They were going to stay there, even though I didn't think they looked great. We kind of let that, we did let that go to city approval, I believe. But you've pulled them out, which when I drove by, I thought, well, good for you, because I just assumed you pulled them out because you were going to put something else in there. Right now, it clearly looks unfinished. I was driving down through another neighborhood the other day, and a grocery store, and because we have that rule for commercial property that every 12 spaces there has to be a tree island. And this person commented and said, look, that's what's happens when you don't have any rules about that, because it just doesn't look nice. And so part of our job is when we talk about architecture, there aren't ordinances that specify what kind of masonry or brick or metal, whatever ethos, whatever people are using. But we try to get people to build something that looks nice because we want the community to look nice. And that's part of it. When you come down Tremorite Road right now, your building looks much better than it did before. The parking lot still needs work. Clearly it's unfinished. There's that mound and kind of hill hole as you drive into it. That needs to be fixed somehow. And I just, as I said, assumed you were going to put planning in. So it really, truly, as everyone has said, is not singling you out. It's really just to make the property look nice. I personally don't need to see a hedgerow there. I just need to see some plants that look nice, some bushes that they don't have to be 3 feet, 3.5 feet on it, I don't know what that. But I think you could consult with someone about what would be some good things to grow here, easy growing, that don't take a lot of maintenance, but would look nice. It just would enhance the view of your property. I agree with you that glare, I don't see that as a real concern because I don't see that as happening. It's more just the look of the property. And, we recently approved another property that wasn't originally going to have a lot of vehicles parked on it. Now it is. And we talked about the screening for that property, that there currently, it just happens, there are a lot of canopy trees that line that area. And I think we decided that was sufficient, but we talked about it. So I really hope you understand that you're not being singled out, you're not being treated unfairly by us. We just want your property to look nice for the city because we represent the city and for you as a property owner. So, maybe it says here, it's a possibility of setting a date like October that you come up with a plan. Maybe you can't really get things planned until spring. It gives you some time. I know landscaping's not cheap. I don't know if that's one of your concerns. But, it would give you some time to think about what you could put in that would look nice and give you some time to actually put it in, maybe in the spring. Talk about that. But I hope you see we are in favor of your business. I was happy to see that you're going ahead with it. And as I said, really pleased to see what you've done with the building. I know that's a lot of work you put in there.
Oh, and that's in addition to a full-time job and
Right.
family and
Sure it
house
is.
and everything. So
Sure.
when it comes down to it, we put in a lot of effort.
Yeah.
So I completely understand and appreciate what you just said. So I followed the code, Monona's code, as the rules, right? So that's how I view it. Here's the rules. So I met all the standards and all the rules that were put forth before me. I gave you the detailed drawing. And I understand everyone here wants some type of landscaping. It's not clearly defined in here what it is. And then if we've got 10 people that want something, the odds of 10 people agreeing on what that something is probably 0, right? 3.5 foot tall hedgerow, non-stop, edge to edge, maybe some decorative something, I don't know. But 10 people are going to want 10 different things. So if I was to ask you, if you had a dream landscape plan in front of you right now that you could say yes to, what would it be? And then if I asked everyone else that, would it be the same thing? Could it be the same thing? Probably not. So where's my direction going forward? If I look to the past, a previous approval by you at that location for a higher volume business, if I look to the past for that, and then the zoning code, and I come forth with a good faith effort, and then I get slapped in the face, and then I get told that, hey, we would really like to see this, but no real definition of what this is. So, like, what is this? 3 shrubs here,
We're not-
18 shrubs here? I mean, there's really...
Joel, we're
no
not
guidance
slapping
here.
you in the face. And as you heard me say at the very beginning of at the public hearing, I requested that the commission essentially, come to agreement by virtue of a motion about what the landscaping would be acceptable enough so that the staff could handle it. Now, that may not happen. The commission may decide that you have to come back to the commission with a plan, but that was my suggestion, was that we be specific enough about what we need to see moving forward and by when, so that it could be by staff approval at a later date. And so again, we're not slapping you in your face. We do, as everyone here has expressed, we deal with landscaping every single meeting. And no, not every single thing about landscaping, just like Susan said, not every single thing about, what a building is made out of or what the facade looks like is in the code. That doesn't mean that it doesn't get discussed and that we don't make specific requests of everybody that comes forward in front of us. So with that, I'm wondering if there's any other comments or questions that the commission would like to make, or if not, do I have a motion?
I have a question. Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
So Nancy, if I asked you right now, exactly what would an acceptable landscape plan for that look like? What would be the minimum number of what and size would be an acceptable landscape plan?
That's not for me to decide,
How would that not be for you to decide?
because I'm an individual
Do you-
member and chair, and it's up for this commission to make the motion, not for me to make a motion.
But you have to agree within it. So now I just got a non-answer. I asked a specific direct question, I got a non-answer.
Joel,
Yeah.
we always come to some agreement when we make a motion of approval. We have a plan in front of us. It has landscaping plants and points on it. We approve the plan. If there are some things that we recommend changes, we do refer it to work with city staff on follow-up if there is something that we request separately. What you are showing us for the prior approval, that was a hedgerow. And then we referred to city staff for additional work. I don't think that is what you want from us. You don't want a hedgerow. We're not saying you need a hedgerow. I don't think we could draw your landscaping plan for you right here. But if we had something to look at, we could come to an approval of it. All of us.
Well, you have something to look at, so if they approve it or deny it.
Could I
Susan?
I think, we could approve this contingent on a final real landscaping plan coming back to the commission by a certain date, whether it's August or September, whatever. Maybe working with city staff. I mean, they would have an idea of if we wanted, I'm not a landscape architect myself. Could I tell you the name of plants you should put there? No. I can't even tell you the name of bushes I have in my yard. I have to ask the landscaper when he comes. What is that again? Because I don't remember. But I know it looks good. I like it, and I just want it to look good. And I want it to be easy maintenance because I'm not a gardener. But I think there are grasses, as someone said, that would look pretty, and they look nice at different times of year. They tend to grow. Things like daylilies they're perennials. I mean, you want something that you're not going to have to plant every year. You want stuff that might just look nice, add a little color maybe. Those are low daylilies, but you can get things like that. You stick them in the ground, you just water them, and they just I always say things have to want to grow in my yard, because that's kind of how it is. But you can choose that someone more knowledgeable than I about plants could give you advice on that, on what kinds of things can I put here that just to make it attractive and will grow without me doing a lot of work, and look nice. And I think it'd be nice to have them kind of along the way. Does it have to be solid? No, I don't think it has to be solid, but just because of where you've dug it all out now, right now it looks messy, and it would just
Right,
look
it's
nice.
under construction.
Right.
We've been working on the.
So I just think, and maybe we could say landscape to be approved by city staff. I don't know how you feel about that, or if you wanted to come back. But just they could advise you on who you could get some advice from as to what to put in there.
Yeah, I've been working with Doug the whole
It
time.
won't be me, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I was working with Doug the whole time. Like, I've been talking to him since January. Basically, at the end of our last meeting, 100% of you hated those shrubs the worst possible way. It was like everyone wanted instant removal, and then actually, I know you didn't care for the rocks, right? So I removed 31 giant boulders and like 5 shrubs, because everyone hated all of them, right? So we're cleaning it up, take care of the front of the building, fixing everything up. We've been reshaping like the front where the shrubs were, because it was like all messed up from the meeting pulled out, to match where further down there was no shrub. So the same height, the same angle, the same everything. We're just shaping it to match that, run around. So it's like following the guidelines of what we were talking about in January. From talking with Doug, this is what what I came up with, and it was apparently like met the rules. I thought it was going to come through here. It was going to be like high fives all around. And we're just going to get this done.
Right. Again, do I have any kind of a motion?
I'll move approval as written by staff. Condition 1 is written by staff. Condition 2, that a final landscaping based on the plan commission discussion tonight be submitted to staff for review and approval. The final parking lot restriping based on the discussion tonight be submitted to staff for review and approval.
I would second that.
Okay, and a second. Could you, might it be possible for that to be amended to provide additional guidance to staff as it relates to, based on the discussion tonight, in terms of what you're looking for from staff on the landscaping?
As always,
Yes.
we go through, we all give an opinion.
Yes.
We don't always agree.
Right.
We come to some consensus of what the reasonable thing is.
Right.
Now, Doug, if he isn't on tonight, I'm sure he'll watch the YouTube video.
Yes.
And the consensus that I've heard is, doesn't have to be a hedge, but it's basically a planting bed in front of
Yes.
those vehicles and
Yes.
some type of a landscape plan. We don't ever design for an applicant, all we can do is react, and that's just the rules. So we don't go out and design them, but certainly he can bring something back to Doug, talk to him about what he thinks. And as always, when we have a condition that goes back to staff for review and approval,
Right.
if staff doesn't think it's right or doesn't agree, then they bring it back to the commission.
Right.
If those two get along, then
Right.
it doesn't have to come back to the commission.
Right.
And so if it comes back and Doug said, I don't think this is kind of hacking it, and you say, well, this is what it is, then he would bring it back to the commission and the commission would vote on it.
Right.
If they agree,
Right.
Then come back. I've heard all kinds of ideas.
I know.
So I think the applicant has to come back with something that he thinks is the reasonable average of what people said tonight. I said a hedge, no one else did.
Right.
But we all talked about landscaping, we know what we require everywhere else.
Right.
And we did require that one that he's showing. If you look at the conditions, we had a requirement to fix that hedgerow and fix it up. It was in the conditions of approval.
Right.
So it didn't just go through with no landscape consideration. Sue's right about that.
Right. I just didn't know if we could provide additional direction for staff in terms of sort of height and length of what you're looking for there, even if it was height and length.
I would say if staff is unsure, they can even at the next plan commission on their item, and you don't have to be here, say, here's what we're doing, is this what you're thinking, or I'm confused.
Okay.
And if they're way apart, if you and Doug are way apart, then you just have to bring it back.
I don't think means I've ever been late.
Well, then you'd probably be great.
That's pretty fine. I mean, for the most part, he's a super reasonable guy. It's like when it comes down to it, we can use, examples that exist in Monona currently. I mean, really, there's like.
Just so you understand, some of these businesses like that retirement center I think you talked about, that hasn't been in the planning commission for 30 years, and ordinances change over 30 years. So things are a lot different now than they were 30 years ago. There's a lot has changed, and we don't have any ability to ask somebody ask somebody to come up to our current code unless they come in for a change or a conditional use permit. That's the time.
I understand how that works. I wasn't using that as an example to get out of a requirement.
Never
There is
mind.
no requirement in my space based on being in process anyway. So I know you can't go through and say, hey, you guys, I know you haven't had a zoning change in 30 years. I need you to do this. I understand that. I wasn't expecting that you're going to march down there, knock on its door, and be like, you need to plant some stuff here. That's not the plan, and I wasn't using it as a tool against that, but it was more or less like, hey, I'm not even required because I'm not across from residential, and then here we're still talking about it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor.
Do you feel Doug would be clear enough on this? I think he will.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've heard is that, you know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a hedge, but people would like to see some screening of
Substantial.
sorts. And something that's substantial,
there's
somewhere
2 feet
around the
per
3-foot-ish range.
So the one comment I was
Yeah.
going to add, given what the purpose is for sale of cars, and he wants to be able to have his cars be seen,
Yeah.
I think we don't want it to be like tall pompous
Right.
grass or
Right.
whatever. So I guess that would be the only guidance I would give Doug, is
Sure.
to make sure it's appropriate to
Sure.
allow
Sure. Yeah.
the business use.
Yeah.
And keeping in mind that the parking lot's 2 feet below
Correct.
currently, like
Yeah.
the sidewalk height. So when it comes down to it, it's like, I could put the lawnmower on the high setting and leave grass there, and it'd probably be close to 3 feet.
Okay, I
So
have a
we-
motion and a second. Do I have, all those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Joel.
I appreciate it.
New business, item number 6, public hearing on the request by Galway Companies for consideration of a zoning permit for tenant improvements and exterior updates at 2101 West Broadway, case number 2-016-2022. Mr. Doran. Steve Doran.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for your patience. Welcome.
I'm glad to be here. It's good to see you all. It's been a while.
Yeah. What would you like to share with us about this tonight?
Well, I'll let Ross kind of walk through the plan, but I guess real quick I can just give a summary. I don't have a tenant for the space next to Floor and Decor. As far as a lease sign, I have a tenant in mind that I'm talking to and hopeful that I can get something done with, a nice retailer that's not in the straight area. And I've sort of designed the facade of the building around what I think that tenant wants, knowing that it's a flexible enough design that if that doesn't come through, that I still want to remodel the exterior, because although I was hoping to not remodel it until I had a tenant, I've realized that I need to get it remodeled regardless to find a tenant. It just looks so bad next to Floor and Decor with those old storefront kind of on the remaining vacant space that I have and hanging into Floor and Decor's space. And regardless of the existing tenant was for it or not, I want to get it remodeled so that I can, get somebody in there.
Sure.
So,
Great.
Ross, I'll let you kind of talk through the plan. I know we had also submitted a request to add a panel position below Floor and Decor's pylon sign. And Ross, I think that was submitted, but it was submitted late. And I didn't see that as part of the package, so I'm not sure if all the commission members have that or not.
It may not. I had sent an update over to Doug this afternoon with that, so I can share on my screen if you all would like. Otherwise, we can kind of talk through it.
It's not, yeah, it hasn't been noticed. I mean, the second piece, Steve, that you just referenced hasn't been noticed, and it's not something that we've received, so we're not going to be able to deal with that piece tonight.
That's okay. Again, I'm not in any time rush to get that piece approved, so I'll get it resubmitted for your review on a later plan commission date.
Thank you.
But we can at least show you tonight and maybe take commentary. if that's okay.
Ross, why don't you go ahead with what we've got in front of us? If you have anything else you want to share, or what you want to share with the facade application that you've given us?
Sure. So specifically to the facade, so obviously, like Steve said, we're going to be taking off the entirety of that shop go kind of bump out canopy piece, bringing the whole facade back to the main plane of the building. We'll have a roughly 1 foot elevated kind of front to back change still, so it won't be completely flat, but more of a traditional look that we've got going on here. It's showing up a little bit yellow, but it's really just kind of a white ethos that we're showing, and then some painted black CMU base to match the floor decor black base that is running across the building. Nice black aluminum green-tiered awning, and then black aluminum storefront to match. And they do have floor decor to paint past their lease line that goes all the way over to the shop go canopy now. So we'll just infill any of the paint that would need to be changed there, which on our elevation is approximately our new work, existing work line. That's approximately where that canopy ends right now. So we'll be matching that paint going over to where we are showing it with those pilasters. As far as site improvements goes, we've talked to Doug last week. So what we have currently today is slightly more improved than what you have in your packet. We've expanded our improvements over to the west to where Steve Dorn owns, which is, I believe it's probably another three parking lot lines from what you see currently. So we've got that upgraded site plan, landscape plan, and all that to match going out there from conversations we had with Doug last week. So we'll be submitting those updates for our final plan commission submittal and hopefully next week here.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we didn't propose any landscape or any site plan improvements on what I consider the outlot, which is that 1.5 acre pad that we intend to develop another retail building of some sort on in the future.
Okay. Great, thank you. So unless there's anyone else who would like to speak during the public hearing portion of this, we'll close the public hearing and go to 6B, the pre-hearing conference on the request by Galway Companies for consideration of a zoning permit for tenant improvements and exterior updates at 2101 West Broadway, case number 2-016-2022.
All right.
You're on.
So this is a pre-hearing conference. There will be another final one where updated plans will be shown. But just for some of the basics, this is part of the community design district and requires a zoning permit, even though there's no new use proposed yet. There's construction, so it requires a permit. I think the intent is for this to be a commercial use in the future, which aligns with all of our land use maps. In terms of the parking lot improvements, the idea is to repave, and so the tenant space, based on the square footage, would be required to have about 56 stalls, and there are 135 included in the plans, so there's more than enough parking, even with some additional tree islands added to the parking lot. As mentioned, and again, this can be shown in more detail in future submittals, there will be some improvements made to the other section of the parking lot. And of course, we'll have more details later. For landscaping, technically with the 135 stalls that are shown, they would be required to have just over 2,000 landscaping points and 11 canopy trees. given sort of the limitations of how much space there is to actually plant landscaping, the applicant is asking for a bit of a reduction on that. Their current landscaping plan shows about 1,300 points, but they do have 22 canopy trees included, which is about double what they would be required to have. So the commission can discuss whether or not that seems appropriate for the site. The applicant described the facade improvements well. It's really just bringing it a little more in line with what Floor & Decor has on their site to make it a little more appealing to tenants. And then this will require stormwater and engineering review. Those plans haven't been shared with the city's engineer yet, but they will be for the final approval. And then, yeah, there technically is no signage included in this proposal. That would be something that would need to be required separately, but certainly something that we could discuss at a future meeting. That's all. No formal action required at this time.
Thank you. Susan, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I think it looks good, and I appreciate the explanation, because when I went over and looked at it, I thought, well, this parking lot goes way beyond. It really goes over, including where Planet Fitness is, but it makes sense to me now if that's part of the area owned. I think the parking lot looks fine. I had a question about the handicap parking. I see that some of it currently is in this other line, and to put it all in one line, it just puts some of it out further. I just wondered what the thinking was behind that. If it wouldn't make more sense to keep some of it in that second line. But as far as the landscaping, I think that it is limited there, and I appreciate the putting in the islands and adding I think you are kind of limited to where you can put trees, and so it might be okay with you could always add a few planters out front to add some color, I guess. That doesn't probably qualify for points, official points, but I'm inclined to think that on this site that would work with the number of trees. I don't really have other comments. I think it'll be an improvement. What's happened so far is a big improvement. And this makes sense to me. And it also makes sense that you'd want to make it look nicer to attract another tenant. So, yeah.
Chris?
Well, I don't know what to say other than this has been such a depressing site that anything you do, I'm excited about, really. The landscaping looks good. I'm glad to hear you're changing the facade to put it in line with the other buildings. I'm not going to miss seeing Shopco there. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Brian?
Can I get some clarification of the 3 additional rows that are owned that are planning? That's to the west of this?
Well, it's shown on the. I assume that you meant it's what's shown here. It's just that the site is only these first 3 rows, the actual site for that new store, and then this is Planet Fitness over here. So it spills over into that area.
Oh.
But that's what that's still owned by.
Okay, so it's not beyond the footprint that's here.
If it helps, we go all the way to the west property line, straight north to where that main drive aisle is separating where we plan to have that future all lot.
He's talking about westward, the westward line, I believe.
Correct.
It will be expanding over to the north-south drive aisle. That's over there.
Okay, all the way over, okay.
So there's an expansion.
Correct, that we don't have.
Yeah, we don't have
Okay.
that.
Yeah. Well, what we do have in front of us, I think the improvements are great. Not necessarily a significant concern regarding this. I think the bigger issue, what was mentioned, was a sign consideration, which I think we'll have to talk about at a different date.
Yeah.
What's sort of confusing about that site plan is we own a parking lot that extends into in front of Planet Fitness, but we don't own the Planet Fitness or the Dollar Tree. We only own one up till this vacant space.
Okay. Okay, that helps.
Thank you.
All right, I would echo Chris, that this is like one of the worst spots in town for me as well. Because this is just a pre-hearing thing, I'd be interested to understand a little bit more why, everything can be, I don't know how I'd put this. The reduction in the points for the landscaping, I would like to understand better why it needs to be reduced, or some sort of explanation when we do get to the need to make a decision about something. But I would like to see as much landscaping as possible get at that space, because I think we need to overcome the sort of the eyesore that area is from a heat island, from a amount of hardscape perspective. So that's all I've got to say.
We love big islands here in the Just saying. Corey, go ahead.
One thing on landscaping is we're not including the additional landscaping that we'll eventually have to do on the outlet, and that may be what's throwing us off. I'm not 100% certain, but when we designed the island and the landscaping plan for this, we matched the rhythm of what Florida recorded.
Okay.
I think there are probably, it's a little hard to tell, but I think there's probably some ways to add in some additional things to the landscaping plan to get some more points. You have the little blue stem under a tree up in the, the southeast corner. So maybe it's just even a matter of mixing the different, like changing up the trees a little bit so you can plant something underneath it. I think there's probably some more you can do there. I was wondering about the lighting, because there's only the 2 lighting fixtures, and that doesn't seem like enough. Did anyone else see that? So that was it.
Can I comment on that, or am I not supposed to be talking?
Yeah, go ahead. No, absolutely, you should be talking.
All right, so Florida Decor actually replaced all the light fixtures in the parking lot.
Okay.
So I can pull that lighting plan and we can include that in our next submittal. But
so there are more light posts in here. I just am not seeing them.
There are not more light posts that I'm aware of. Are you, Ross?
There's 2 more up along that north-south drive aisle. So there's 2 on the southern and then 2 on the north, or 2 on the eastern, 2 on the western portion of your lot that we're updating.
Do you want them, Corey, are you suggesting that including the original lighting plan would be helpful for the next submittal?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're happy to do that. I think that will help.
Okay. Chris?
Okay. First, Steve, I think this is really forward thinking. I really love it. I think it'll be a lot easier to rent the space, whether it's someone you're talking to now or somebody else in the future. Curb appeal, as you know, that's your first impression coming to the place. And the other commissioners have mentioned it. It looks pretty bad when you go in there. So I think this is great on your part. There's nothing that we're requiring you. You're doing it voluntarily. I applaud you for that. Question on the facade. You've got the 3 paint colors all to your left, but now you're completing for all of your property you own. Are you continuing those? Once you pass this new facade you're adding, then those paint colors repeat, or what are you proposing to the right of your new facade?
I don't own anything to the right.
Oh, I thought you said that you're going all the way your ownership, which is further to the right of what you're doing.
No, so next to us is Planet Fitness. That went up until Planet Fitness. So this is what we're proposing is everything that we own.
Okay, let me ask it this way. I don't know if you can see me, but you're keeping their color patterns here. You've got this little bit of CMU over here that doesn't match that. Would that keep the color pattern there, or just to the right?
Single color.
Single color? There was a comment about stormwater. I think if all he's doing is milling and repaving, I don't think it's a requirement. So when you get into the subgrade, it becomes a requirement. And if he's not going into the subgrade, other than for some minor undercutting, I don't think that our stormwater requirements kick in.
Okay.
So I would check that before you send it over there. I'm pretty sure the way the ordinance reads is you can repave. Islands, I love what you're suggesting to do to fix this up, and I'm perfectly fine with islands you're proposing. And for me, the landscape points are fine because this is fair warning. When you develop that outlot up front, that's going to be the front of this entire area, and that will require probably more landscaping points than normal. So I think if you saturate your landscaping with that front outlot, which is the impression when you come in, and a little less here, I think I'm good with that, if he does it that way. And while we're on those islands, we almost always, I can't believe we would have missed it, but we always require green in the islands. And the green can be grass or it can be the shrubs, but something down below that's green. And I looked at what you did at Floor and Decor, and only the front couple ones have that. The rest of them are nothing but bark mulch. Is there plantings going in there yet?
Well, so my deal with Floor and Decor was an as-is delivery, Chris. So they actually did all their own entitlements and approvals with me just kind of watching and helping along as they needed. But they designed, I didn't design their plans. They did all their plans and they did all that on their own cost.
Right.
So I'm not exactly sure what was approved there or what was done.
Okay, well then that's something we can just look at from staff. I'm pretty sure we had green in the islands. We always do. It's either grass or shrubs. And they did do that. So that we need to get back to Floor.
I'm happy to look at it too, and we can get them to do it the right way if we need to.
Okay. And then last, I agree with Kareen's comment about the lighting, and we're not approving your lighting on this. You're coming forward voluntarily to do this. But if I were going to repave, I would, if I need a couple extra light poles somewhere, I'd investigate it now. If I need that conduit, I'd put it in while I'm repaving, so that when you go in, because of course when you do get someone to occupy that space, that's when we'll look at the lighting to make sure it's adequate.
Yep.
So
we'll get a lighting plan submitted. We want it lit up too, and I will tell you that before Floor and Decor replaced all those light poles, they were all like metal halide cutoffs, and they're all now LEDs, and it made a tremendous difference out there.
Great. So overall, I think this is great that you're coming forward to do this ahead of time. Again, awesome. Well done.
Anything else? Any other feedback? Susan?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, because I really appreciate your last comment, Chris, about the outlet. That was what I was thinking, and I didn't really say that. And it was part of the problem that some of us had with just looking at this small piece, is because it is in the context of the entire lot. And so in my head, when I looked at it, I had exactly the same thought, that this landscaping looked, I was willing to, particularly in light of the last conversation, I just think it's important to make it clear, I was willing to do less points on this part because I think that outlot is what shows from the street, and that is going to require more canopy trees or something, more intense landscaping along the street part, because we're only looking at this one small section. So, just to clarify that piece. But I think it looks great.
Greg, do you feel like you got you're clear on the feedback you got tonight, you guys? And I just to echo what Brian said earlier, we can't without any kind of pre-notice, we can't discuss the other piece that you wanted to discuss tonight. We're just going to have to wait until another meeting.
Okay. That's no problem. We'll get it submitted for the next one, and we can talk about that meeting. No problem. I understand.
Yeah, just so you understand, it wasn't on our agenda. So if we discuss it, give you direction, somebody can call back and say, I didn't think this was being discussed. I should have been here before you gave me direction. I should be able to speak. It's just fair public hearing.
Sure. No, I understand completely.
Yep. So, assuming you're clear, then we thank you again for coming tonight, and we look forward to having you back. And again, thank you for making this investment. I hope it is a sufficient carrot to get the tenant of your dreams and that's final thoughts.
You bet. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. With that, we'll move to reports of staff and commission members. Staff report regarding the status of development project proposals.
I do not have any updates for
Okay.
you all.
Okay.
I'm
Thank you.
sure there are things working their way through.
Okay.
But yeah, Doug is usually the one who has that.
Potential upcoming plan commission items, you don't have anything?
I think as stated before, obviously we'll have these tenant improvements come back
Yep.
soon. And I don't believe that they're necessarily coming through at the next meeting, but I do believe the Bloom, the Monona Drive development has been in discussion with CDA, so they may be coming back at some point this summer. Those are the only ones that I'm aware of right now.
Great, thank you. Updates, discussion on diversity, equity, inclusion efforts. I think it may have been reported at the last meeting, I can't recall from watching the video. The ad hoc committee that was appointed by the mayor and city council, approved by the city council, to offer a report to the city on what the city could do to improve efforts around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Did in fact produce their report. It's quite extensive, thorough, very thorough. I want to thank the ad hoc committee for creating it. On Thursday night at 6:30. It's going to be an open forum, public forum, for discussion of that report in full here, right here, in the municipal room in the library at 6:30 on Thursday night. I would encourage anyone to attend or I assume that we're going to be carrying it or recording it as well, but it's a great opportunity. If you haven't read that report, it's been posted on the city's website. Don't think there's anything on sustainability front.
Nope, nothing from staff.
Nothing on sustainability. Upcoming meetings on the 25th. I assume we'll be having a meeting. There'll be agenda items. Do we have any planning commission requests for information?
I have a question.
Yes.
Landscaping. Speaking of landscaping, why is our landscaping across the city not being maintained? There's weeds that are 3 feet tall and just, it's...
You're talking about on city property or private property?
City property.
City property. I can certainly follow up with like right-of-ways.
Yeah, I mean, I was at the farmer's market and the islands are just full of thistle and weeds and just, and down by the city, by the community center, I don't know if you've walked past there, we should be taking care of our own things.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what the issue is, so
Sure.
I was just curious.
I can follow up with that and inquire both of Public Works and Parks and Rec.
I would 100% agree with that statement.
Yeah.
We're not doing the best job.
Yeah.
And I ask about it every third or fourth meeting about all the trees missing on Monona Drive, and yeah, we're working on it. But we ask our applicants to do a lot, and we should hold ourselves to the same standard.
Yeah.
And people are coming to our community for different events, and that's not the face we want to put forward.
Right. Like I said, I will be happy to follow up with both Public Works and Parks and Rec, who are our landscaping and tree people, depending on location. And this is not at all to excuse them in any way, but obviously for the last 3 weeks or so since that storm, they've had their hands full with a lot of other things. But,
well, and I wondered if that was part of the challenge, and if so,
maybe
we could do it.
But obviously, I think what you're suggesting has been going on for a lot more than 3 weeks. So certainly the media and stuff that Chris is referring to on the drive and other things. Yeah, so we can follow up. Could definitely follow up. I mean, I know that, yeah. So, thank you for mentioning it. Anything else? Okay. With that, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Holy cow. Anybody? For anybody who's interested, the ding on my phone right around the end of Joel's thing was the mayor texting to say, I hope you all are going out for a drink after this meeting.